Chapter 256. Looking at the figures kneeling on the ground, Gu Liang couldn't help but gasp. From the beginning to the end, Lin Sun didn't say any harsh words at all, but forced these ruffians to kneel down and apologize. His power was too strong. But this was not the end. Lin Sun didn't even look at the ruffians kneeling on the ground, but looked at the uneasy old Qian. As soon as Lin Sun opened his mouth, the old guy also knelt on the ground and said bitterly, "I know my mistake. Child, please forgive me and let me go this time." Lin Sun slightly raised the corner of his mouth. This old guy was really shrewd. He completely lowered his attitude, which made Lin Sun feel a little sorry to trouble him again. Gu Liang was completely shocked at this moment. The ruffian knelt on the ground, but the old man with a goatee was a member of Azure Light Pavilion. But now, even he directly knelt down, which seemed too incredible. Gu Liang didn't know that after that night of fighting in the rain, Lin Sun had already become the most feared opponent of more than a dozen forces in the city. Even Qi Yunxiao, the young master of Azure Light Pavilion, suffered a lot in Lin Sun's hands, let alone old Qian in front of him. Speaking of which, old Qian was not an important role. He was just a steward of Azure Light Pavilion. There were a lot of people like him in Azure Light Pavilion, and only those ruffians would treat him as a big shot. "Tell me what's going on." Lin Sun sat in the chair and asked casually. Old Qian shivered all over, and his face was pale. He thought that Lin Sun still didn't intend to let him go. He gritted his teeth and reached out to slap his old face. The slap was crisp and loud, and soon his thin cheeks were red and swollen. "I know I'm wrong. Child, please forgive me." Old Qian begged as he slapped himself. He knew very well that if Lin Sun didn't forgive him, Azure Light Pavilion would definitely dare to eat him alive. Whether for his own future or to save his life, he had to do so. He had seen Lin Sun's means. This guy seemed to be young and looked harmless and handsome, but anyone who knew him would know that he was a killer who killed people without blinking an eye. Nowadays, among more than a dozen forces in Mist City, Lin Sun's name was like a taboo. Who dared to make trouble for him? He must be tired of living. Gu Liang was stunned. The ruffians kneeling on the ground were also stunned. Was this the old Qian they knew? "Well, I just want to know why you want to deal with Golden Hall. Make it clear, and you can leave." Lin Sun glanced at old Qian. When old Qian heard this, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. As long as he could live. So what if he was embarrassed? "Young master, this is actually a misunderstanding." Elder Qian took a deep breath and explained, "If I knew that Golden Hall has something to do with you, I wouldn't dare to send people here to make a scene." It turned out that before Gu Liang rented this shop, Elder Qian had also taken a liking to this shop, but he was a step too late. He had originally given up, but who would have thought that after a little investigation, he would find out that the person who rented this shop, Gu Liang, was an outsider and was also a young boy. Thus, the following matters were simple. Elder Qian used the power in his hands to send a group of hooligans to find trouble with him. He wanted to drive Gu Liang away and take the shop for himself. But he never expected that the outsider Gu Liang, who was easy to bully in his eyes, actually knew Lin Sun. Knowing all this, Lin Sun couldn't help laughing. He thought that Azure Light Pavilion had realized Gu Yinping's ability, so they sent their forces to prevent Golden Hall from gaining a foothold in Mist City. Who would have thought that the reason was so strange? Gu Liang was completely relieved when he learned all this. As long as Azure Light Pavilion didn't target him, it would be easy to deal with it. "Go away." Lin Sun waved his hand. Old Qian was stunned. It seemed that he couldn't believe that Lin Sun would let him go so easily. He couldn't help asking, "Young master, you really don't care about my mistakes anymore?" Lin Sun said angrily, "Go away. Don't blame me for beating you if you don't go away." This time, old Qian was finally completely relieved. He got up and ran away with a group of hooligans. "It's time for me to go. If you encounter any trouble in the future, be sure to find me. Of course, the premise is that I'm still in Mist City." Lin Sun got up, told Gu Liang his address with a smile, and was about to leave. Gu Liang called out, "Wait." Lin Sun was stunned. "Is there anything else?" Gu Liang seemed to hesitate in his heart. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, "Lin Sun, since we are friends, I will tell you directly. I want to invite you to join Golden Hall. In the future, you will also have a share of Golden Hall's income. Lin Sun was stunned. Why do you want to do this? Gu Yang said impatiently. There is no reason. I just want to do this. Tell me whether you agree or not. Of course, I know that you're a busy man and will definitely not develop business with me. I won't force you. You just need to be a nominal member. If you don't want to be known by others, I can keep it a secret for you. After saying so much, Lin Sun suddenly understood that Gu Yang was trying to give him benefits. You really don't have to do this. Lin Sun said helplessly. Since we are friends, it is natural for us to support each other. Gu Yang said seriously. Lin Sun, do you look down on Golden Hall? Do you think it is useless to join Golden Hall? Lin Sun was completely convinced. He knew that Gu Yang was goading him, but he had to admit that this trick was really useful. At least, he didn't know what to say. Well, I have a batch of spiritual materials here. Just take it that I am a shareholder of Golden Hall. Lin Sun said, took out a storage bag and handed it to Gu Yang. Take it. If you don't accept it, I won't join. Gu Yang glared at Lin Sun angrily. He didn't expect that Lin Sun would play such a trick on him, but he had no choice but to accept it. Well, whether Golden Hall can rise in the empire in the future depends on you. I'm only responsible for a nominal member. Lin Sun teased Gu Yang with a smile and strode out of Golden Hall. But when he walked on the street, he couldn't help turning his head to look at the signboard of Golden Hall. He couldn't help thinking that one day, Golden Hall could rise like a comet and become the first business force in the empire. Immediately, Lin Sun shook his head and disappeared in the vast crowd. That guy is really the same as before. In the shop, thinking of what had just happened, Gu Yang couldn't help feeling warm. He didn't regret his decision just now. Even if his father Gu Yinping knew it, he would do it resolutely. Gu Yang knew that Lin Sun was a pure practitioner. Lin Sun's path was completely different from his, and it was even impossible for Lin Sun to help Golden Hall in the future. But did it matter? Not at all. At least for Gu Yang, it was not a big deal to give some of Golden Hall's income to Lin Sun. After all, Lin Sun was his friend. As the saying goes, if you treat me as a national scholar, I will treat you as a national scholar. After a while, Gu Yang played with the storage bag left by Lin Sun. He intended to put it away, but after thinking about it, he opened it and took a look. Just a glance made Gu Yang stunned. Silver plume, snow whalebone, netherworld fire lamp grass, 9-turn geocentric iron. Gu Yang couldn't imagine that there were dozens of rare spiritual materials in the storage bag left by Lin Sun casually. Each kind of spiritual material could definitely be sold at a sky-high price on the market. How much would the total value of these dozens of spiritual materials be? As a commercial practitioner, Gu Yang soon roughly calculated an astronomical figure in his mind, which was at least no less than 100,000 gold coins. If it was done well, it could even be sold at a higher price. And this price was enough to buy all the properties of Golden Hall that Gu Yang and his father, Gu Yinping, had built up. This guy actually left such an amazing wealth so casually. Gu Yang sat there in a daze, his mood fluctuating. He didn't know what to say to Lin Sun. After a long time, Gu Yang took a deep breath and forcibly suppressed the fluctuations in his heart. His eyes had become bright and firm. Since you dare to throw a lot of money at me, how can I live up to your trust if I don't develop Golden Hall into a world-famous first-class business? Lin Sun, wait for me. I will give you an unexpected return in the future. Those spiritual materials were naturally given to Lin Sun by Granny Wind for repairing the ancient rhythm ocarina. But in order to vent his anger, Lin Sun didn't need most of the spiritual materials he asked for, so he gave them to Gu Yang casually. These spiritual materials were very expensive. As for how expensive they were, Lin Sun couldn't tell the specific figure. But now he was not short of money, so it was worth it to invest in Golden Hall. Of course, if Golden Hall really rose in the empire in the future and completely developed into a first-class business force, Gu Yang would definitely share more profits with him according to his character. Even if Golden Hall failed to develop and completely closed down, it didn't matter. He didn't take out these spiritual materials to make money. In the final analysis, The reason why Lin Sun did this was largely because of Gu Yinping. If Gu Yinping hadn't personally helped him guard the gate and resist the enemy in Donglin town, he and Xia Ji would probably have been killed. How could Lin Sun forget such a life-saving grace? Of course, Gu Liang regarded him as a friend, which Lin Sun could also feel. Since Gu Liang invited him to join Golden Hall and gave him benefits only in name, Lin Sun naturally wouldn't let Gu Liang suffer losses. When he returned home, Lin Sun had already put this matter behind him. From today on, he planned to refine his cultivation wholeheartedly and prepare for the third test of the Hall of Green Cloud that would be opened in a month. In his mind, every challenge in the heaven-accessing secret land was a rare opportunity. He had to grasp it firmly and not allow any mistakes to occur. Chapter 257. The most tragic thing was that my friend's car was also flooded and broke down. As a northerner, this was the first time in years that I had encountered such a violent downpour. It was an eye-opening experience. Chapter 258. From that day on, Lin Sun began a closed-door training and devoted himself to cultivation. As time went on, many practitioners who went to the commune of spiritual tattooists found that Master Sun, who often accepted tasks in the past, seemed to have disappeared and never appeared again. This made many practitioners disappointed. They thought that Master Sun had left the commune of spiritual tattooists, and there was little hope for them to entrust tasks to him. There were also many practitioners who were unwilling to give up and urged the commune of spiritual tattooists to invite Master Sun back, which made Chu Feng feel helpless. Of course, he hoped that Lin Sun would stay in the commune of spiritual tattooists all the time, but this was obviously impossible. Even if Lin Sun didn't completely leave the commune of spiritual tattooists, Chu Feng was very clear that Lin Sun was still young and had infinite potential. Such a genius could not be kept by the commune of spiritual tattooists at all. Of course, Chu Feng was also very happy about this. Of course, he hoped that Lin Sun would become stronger and stronger. Only in this way could Lin Sun help solve his most difficult problems when he needed help in the future. Chu Feng knew that he established contact with Lin Sun with a certain selfishness at the beginning. But as time went on, he had completely regarded Lin Sun as a friend now. Occasionally, he even thought that even if Lin Sun couldn't help him in the future, it was not a big deal. He had done his best and left it to fate. In the courtyard, Shu Jin teased Chirps with a glass full of mellow liquor with a smile on his face. To Shu Jin's surprise, Qiuqiu was obviously drooling, but in the end, she still shook her head and refused. Her black eyes were filled with a solemn and resolute expression. Shu Jin couldn't help laughing and thought that Chirps was really obedient. Lin Sun only corrected it twice, and Chirps didn't dare to drink anymore. What virtue and ability does this kid have to actually make a spiritual beast like you submit to him? The heavens are truly blind. Shu Jin murmured and couldn't help glancing at Lin Sun's room. Different from before, there were faint wisps of obscure power flowing around Lin Sun's room, which looked very mysterious. This was the simplest kind of spirit gathering formation. It used high-grade spirit stones as its source, and when it was activated, it could gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth for the cultivator's cultivation. Of course, no matter how simple the spirit gathering formation was, it was still a spiritual tattoo formation, not a simple spiritual tattoo pattern. Generally, only the rich and powerful forces would spend a lot of resources to invite a spiritual tattooist to arrange a spirit-gathering formation for their own clansmen for their cultivation. Moreover, a spirit-gathering formation would consume at least 10 high-grade spirit stones to operate for a day. This was a huge expense that ordinary cultivators could not afford. The reason why Lin Sun built this formation was not because he was rich, but because he wanted to refine the power of Cloud Gang Purple Spirit Elixir at the beginning of his closed-door cultivation. When the Nature Insight and Spirit Devour Scripture and the Windstorm Millstone in his body ran at full strength together, it immediately caused a lot of noise, like the roar of wind and thunder, which could be perceived by the whole courtyard. Shu Jin was shocked at once. When he learned that it was caused by Lin Sun's cultivation, he had a strange feeling in his heart. He judged that Lin Sun's cultivation method must be extraordinary. Out of a kind of protection, Shu Jin advised Lin Sun to use the spirit gathering formation with the help of it, so that the noise during cultivation could be covered, and at the same time, the spirit gathering formation could be used for better cultivation. This practice was very common in the rich and powerful forces. There were even some practitioners who dug a basement at home and arranged layers of spiritual tattoo formations in order to concentrate on cultivation and avoid being spied on by others. After all, when a practitioner was cultivating, he was the most defenseless. If an enemy came to assassinate him, the consequences would be unthinkable. I don't know what the pond of spiritual power in this boy's body is. He has been cultivating for so many days. Isn't he afraid that he can't bear it? Shu Jin calculated that Lin Sun had been cultivating for more than 20 days without leaving home. The spirit gathering formation was running all the time without any rest. This was too rare. When a practitioner cultivated, there was a limit. When the spiritual energy in his body exceeded the limit that his body could bear, he would either be possessed by the devil or explode and die. For a human gang practitioner, even if he had a first-class pond of spiritual power and a talented cultivation foundation, few people could cultivate for more than 20 days without rest. Shu Jin had been staying in the yard and saw all this. Naturally, he knew how abnormal and horrible the potential of Lin Sun's cultivation was. Because of this, although he seemed calm on the surface, he was actually a little shocked and even worried that Lin Sun's cultivation would cause a backfire. Whatever, this boy is as treacherous as a ghost. He must know the consequences of more haste, less speed. People like him will not do things that are disadvantageous to themselves. Shu Jin muttered to himself and shook his head. For Lin Sun, his life seemed to be isolated from the rest of the world. It was so peaceful that there was no disturbance at all. But in today's Mist City, there was a grand event that attracted the attention of the whole city. That was the centennial celebration of Keystone Business, which was about to begin soon. It was said that Keystone Business had spent a lot on this celebration. It was said that on the day of the celebration, all the top figures of the city, such as Liu Wujuan, the governor of the city governor's mansion, Wei Lingjin, the president of Mist College, Du Dongtu, the commander of Xiling Army. Each of them was a giant with the ability to turn the clouds and rain. They were famous not only in Mist City, but also in the whole Southwest province. From the identity of these distinguished guests, it could be seen how much Keystone Business had spent for this celebration, which could not be achieved by just throwing money. Of course, the most interesting and anticipated thing was that Miss Liu Qingyan, who was famous all over the world and was fanatically sought after by the younger generation of the empire and had a heavenly voice, would also attend the celebration. It could be imagined what a great sensation such an unprecedented event would cause in Mist City. As the time of the celebration approached, the atmosphere became more and more lively. The topic of the celebration was everywhere in the streets, restaurants, and tea houses. Of course, Liu Qingyan was undoubtedly the most talked about topic. This might be the celebrity effect. The name Liu Qingyan was like the brightest star in the night sky. As long as she appeared there, she would attract countless eyes. Unfortunately, no matter how great the sensation caused by this grand event was, Lin Sun was unaware of it. There were more important things in his mind. That was to meet the challenge of the third pass of Green Cloud Path in the Heaven Accessing Place. Green Tea Pavilion. Liu Qingyan sat at the desk, supporting her chin with her smooth, white elbows, looking lazy. On the table, there was a piece of snow-white paper with lines of elegant handwriting written on it. These were the new lyrics she had recently written for a piece of music. She had only written it halfway and had yet to finish it. Time is fleeting, and the road to cultivation is difficult. After hundreds and thousands of twists and turns, I look for the sound of Tao. In the end, I can't see the road to immortality, only the grave of heroes. My white hair withered and became nothing. Who can say I am lonely? Liu Qingyan murmured softly. Her starry eyes were blurred and illusory, and there was a trace of sadness between her bright eyebrows. Standing on one side, Granny Wind couldn't help but feel shocked when she heard this. In an instant, she gave birth to a lot of emotions. The road to cultivation was so cruel. Time was too fast, and the road to cultivation was uncertain. She was afraid that all her efforts might be in vain. She didn't expect that her miss would have such feelings. Is this a new lyric for the new song? Granny Wind couldn't help asking. Lu Qingyan shook her head and said with a smile, Granny, if I sing such a sad song at the celebration of Keystone Business, I'm afraid it will make a lot of people unhappy. Granny Wind snorted, Miss, you don't have to pay attention to this. They invited you. How dare they be picky? Lu Qingyan nibbled the tip of her pen with her moist lips and suddenly said, Granny, is there any news from Child Lin? At the mention of Lin's son, Granny Wind's face darkened, and she said, How can this little bastard hand over the repaired ancient rhythm ocarina so easily? Don't worry, Mississippi. I'll find a chance to visit Master's son in person. Lu Qingyan quickly dissuaded. No need. I'm not in a hurry anyway. Granny, don't embarrass Child Lin anymore. What happened in the arena last time made me very sorry. Before Granny Wind could speak, she changed the topic and said, By the way, will Child Lin attend the celebration of Keystone Business? Granny Wind narrowed her eyes and said vigilantly, Miss, that boy is not a good person. Before Granny Wind finished, Lu Qingyan said helplessly, Granny, you think too much. I just think that Child Lin helped me a lot this time. But last time, because of me, he had a duel with Huang Jianchen. I really feel a little guilty, so I want to make it up to him. Granny Wind nodded and said, Miss, you don't have to do this. As far as I know, Keystone Business has already sent an invitation to Master Sun, the boy's master. I think Master Sun will definitely take the boy with him. Lu Qingyan nodded and said softly, That's good. Since Child Lin knows ancient rhythm ocarina, he must have dabbled in music theory. I don't know how he will evaluate my performance at that time. Granny Wind suddenly became vigilant again, but when she wanted to say something, she saw that Lu Qingyan had begun to fill in the lyrics seriously. She immediately held back and said no more. But in her heart, she had put Lin on the blacklist of people who should never be allowed to get close to Mississippi. A few days later, in the early morning, the whole Mist City seemed to wake up from a deep sleep and gradually became lively. In front of the magnificent and gorgeous building of Keystone Business, there was already a sea of people. Many people had been waiting here last night. The reason was very simple. Today was the beginning of the centennial celebration of Keystone Business. Many distinguished guests and Miss Lu Qingyan would arrive one after another today. What a grand scene it would be. Countless people were looking forward to it. Chapter 259. Outside Keystone Business, the floor was covered with red carpets and many waiters. It was very lively. Elite and powerful guards guarded the road leading to Keystone Business so as not to block the arrival of distinguished guests. On both sides of the road, there was already a sea of people. As far as the eye could see, there were blackheads everywhere, blocking the area. Most of them were practitioners, but there were also some ordinary people. They all came to watch the fun. They were not qualified to receive the invitation letter of Keystone Business. Naturally, it was impossible for them to enter Keystone Business and attend the celebration in person. But even so, they didn't want to miss such a grand event. Today, all the big shots in Mist City would come as appointed, including Lu Qingyan, a world-famous legendary art practitioner. If they could see them before they entered, it would be a worthwhile trip. In the crowd on both sides of the road, there were even many young men and women holding banners with many exaggerated and eye-catching slogans written on them. For example, the picturesque landscape can't compare to your sweet smile. Welcome Miss Lu Qingyan to Mist City. The heavenly voice belongs to me. Qingyan, the beauty of a sweet voice should only exist in heaven. It was exaggerated, but it also showed how great the influence of Lu Qingyan was among the younger generation of the empire. When Chu Feng arrived here with the invitation letter, he saw such a lively scene. He couldn't help but sigh with emotion that Keystone Business was really generous. Chu Feng didn't rush in, but stood in the crowd to see how many big shots would come to this grand event today. Not long after, there was a sudden commotion in the crowd in the distance, and there was a burst of exclamation. The Dean of Mist College is here. Senior Wei Lingjin is a famous strongman in Tao Insight Realm. He has been teaching in Miss College these years and rarely shows up. I didn't expect that he would come in person this time. In the uproar, an old man in plain clothes, riding a green donkey, came from the distance. He was thin and indifferent, like a wild crane in the clouds, with the bearing of a grandmaster. Seeing him, many of the Xiozha had expressions of admiration, their gazes filled with awe. This was Wei Lingjin, a famous big shot in Miss City. Wei Lingjin is the first one to appear. Chu Feng was a little surprised. As far as he knew, Wei Lingjin was aloof and indifferent, and he didn't like to show his face in public. But this time, he not only came in person, but also was the first one to appear, which was really abnormal. From this, it could be seen how powerful Keystone Business was. Not everyone could invite Wei Lingjin, such a reclusive big shot, to come out. Not long after Wei Lingjin arrived, there was a burst of exclamation in the field again, which made it very lively. Big shots, who were rarely seen in the past, came in one after another, either in chariots or in companions and riding spirit beasts. All of them were dignified and emanated a noble aura that assaulted the face, causing wave after wave of exclamations to resound out in the surroundings, and it was extremely shocking. When Governor Lu Wujuan's team appeared, the atmosphere became more and more sensational. Lu Wujuan was the most powerful figure in the entire southwest province of the empire. At this time, Chu Feng's expression changed slightly, with a touch of indescribable complexity. He watched Lu Wujuan's team enter Keystone Business. However, when he was about to take back his eyes, he saw a middle-aged scholar coming out of Lu Wujuan's team and walking straight towards him. Seeing this person, Chu Feng's pupils suddenly shrank, and his expression became cold. A trace of hatred flashed imperceptibly in the depth of his eyes. "I didn't expect to see you here. It's really surprising." The middle-aged scholar came over. He put his hands behind his back, slightly raised his chin, and glanced at Chu Feng with a trace of arrogance. "If you can come, why can't I?" Chu Feng didn't have the former elegant temperament, and his voice became cold and low. He seemed to be enduring something in his heart, and his face was full of haze. "Oh, after so many years, you still don't give up? You should know that as long as I am in Mist City, you will never be able to raise your head again." The middle-aged scholar said slowly, "Look, I'm not only here, but also can enter the celebration site of Keystone Business. But you, the great director of the commune of spiritual tattooists, didn't even receive an invitation. You can only stand outside the door and watch the fun. If your relatives and friends in the Forbidden City know this, they will definitely despise you more." Chu Feng seemed to be irritated with blue veins on his forehead. He stared at the middle-aged scholar. After a long time, he suddenly smiled and said leisurely, "I'm sorry to let you down. I came with an invitation this time. Unlike you, you can only be a lackey of Lu Wujuan and can only participate by virtue of Lu Wujuan's face." With that, he didn't look at the middle-aged scholar again, turned, and walked towards the gate of Keystone Business. He took out the invitation letter, and immediately, an attendant respectfully led Chu Feng inside. Seeing this, the middle-aged scholar couldn't help but be stunned, especially when he saw Chu Feng enter Keystone Business openly. A cold light flashed in his eyes. "So what? With your identity, you will only be treated coldly in this celebration." The middle-aged scholar sneered and followed Chu Feng in. At the same time, there was a burst of earth-shattering cheers in the field. The atmosphere suddenly reached an unprecedented height. Many people were excited and shouting loudly. Needless to say, it was Lu Qingyan. If Chu Feng saw this scene, he would be excited with his admiration for Lu Qingyan. Unfortunately, he was in a bad mood now when he saw the middle-aged scholar, so he didn't pay much attention to this. The middle-aged scholar was Ruan Du, now a counselor of the governor Lu Wujuan. But only Chu Feng knew that Ruan Du had another identity. He was a guest elder of the Chu clan in the Forbidden City and was highly valued by the Chu clan. Chu Feng also came from the Chu clan. Different from Ruan Du, he was a real member of the Chu clan and a direct descendant. But more than 10 years ago, because of a conspiracy to fight for the power of the clan, Chu Feng was schemed against and completely expelled from the Chu clan. Otherwise, with Chu Feng's identity, how could he be reduced to Mist City? What chilled Chu Feng most was that after he was expelled from the clan, those enemies didn't dare to kill him easily, but they still didn't give up. So they sent Wan Lingdu to Mist City, who had been secretly rejecting and suppressing Chu Feng, bringing him a lot of humiliation and torture. In these years, with his identity as the director of the commune of spiritual tattooists, he could have made friends with many powerful forces in the city. But since Wan Lingdu became the counselor of the governor Lu Wujuan, Chu Feng became the object of exclusion of many forces in Mist City. No one wanted to make friends with him. Just like the centenary celebration of Keystone Business, according to common sense, with his identity as the director of the commune of spiritual tattooists, he could easily get an invitation letter. However, he didn't get one and had to borrow Lin Sun's invitation to attend the celebration. This was Chu Feng's current situation. He was expelled by the clan, suppressed, and humiliated by Wan Lingdu. It seemed to be glorious on the surface, but in fact, he was in an extremely humiliating situation. However, after years of suppression, Chu Feng had already honed his extremely tenacious mind. Naturally, he would not admit defeat. Even because of the appearance of Lin Sun, he had seen some hope. Walking into Keystone Business, Chu Feng was soon led into a spacious palace by the attendants. The palace was beautifully carved with carved beams and painted pillars. Different areas are divided into different seats in good order. It was roughly estimated that this hall could accommodate tens of thousands of people. Luxurious, generous, stylish. This was Chu Feng's intuitive impression of Keystone Business. At this time, many people had already come to the hall. Any one of them could be a powerful figure of a big force in Mist City. The celebration had not yet begun. These big shots, who used to be very prestigious in the past, were talking with each other at the moment. It seemed that the hall was full of friends, and they were talking and laughing. But when they saw Chu Feng, no matter who they were, they all showed a touch of surprise. Then they looked away coldly, as if they didn't care about Chu Feng at all. Even if he had been prepared in his heart, Chu Feng still felt aggrieved in the face of these cold and indifferent eyes. But soon he got over it. He came here to see Lu Qingyin's elegant demeanor with his own eyes. Apart from that, he had no other thoughts. As for those disdainful eyes in the field, he didn't care about them. Wan Lingdu followed into the hall. Seeing the cold treatment and disregard suffered by Chu Feng along the way, he couldn't help feeling proud. So what if he had an invitation? If this wasn't asking for humiliation, then what was? Looking at Wan Lingdu, no matter where he went, there would be big shots taking the initiative to talk with him. He seemed to be extremely popular. Compared with the treatment received by Chu Feng, it was a world of difference. Chu Feng was very disdainful of this. He knew that the reason why Wan Lingdu was so popular was that he was the closest counselor of Governor Lu Wujuan and had the support of the Chu clan in the Forbidden City, which made him like a fish in water in Mist City. Otherwise, it was impossible for Wan Lingdu to make all the major forces in Mist City reject and ignore Chu Feng. Unconsciously, Chu Feng had been led to the front row of the hall by the attendants, where only the chief VIP was qualified to sit. When he saw this scene, Chu Feng couldn't help but be stunned. How could this be? Even if he didn't receive exclusion and ridicule, it seemed that he was not qualified to sit here according to his identity as the chief director of the commune of spiritual tattooists. But immediately, he vaguely guessed that this might have something to do with the invitation sent by Lin Sun. Practically at the same time, a wave of ridiculing laughter suddenly sounded out from behind him. Some people really don't know how to appreciate favors and actually have delusions of thinking about things that they shouldn't be thinking about. Should I say that he's full of courage, or should I say that he's stupid and ignorant? Ha ha ha. It's ridiculous. Have you ever seen such a reckless clown? Without looking back, Chu Feng knew that this was Wan Lingdu's ridicule. Chapter 260. Wan Lingdu was sneering, and many big shots around him also showed a playful smile more or less. Chu Feng's move was a little too rash. How could he be qualified to think about the chief VIP position? Such a reckless move was just like a monkey wearing a crown, which was ridiculous like a clown. Being stared at by all kinds of eyes, Chu Feng only felt like there was a knife on his back, and he couldn't help but feel humiliated again. Over the years, although he was frequently excluded and ridiculed, it was the first time for him to be ridiculed by so many big shots present. Chu Feng took a deep breath and looked at the attendant beside him. His voice was a little cold. "Did you do it on purpose? Who arranged you to do this?" He wanted to probe the situation and see if there was someone secretly instructing him to embarrass him on purpose, or if there was some other hidden reason. The attendant was taken aback and quickly said respectfully, "Senior, the invitation in your hand shows that this seat was prepared for you." Chu Feng couldn't help but take out the invitation letter, looked at it carefully, and said, "Really?" Seeing this scene, Ruan Lingdu laughed more and more exaggeratedly. If it wasn't for the occasion and losing his demeanor, he really wanted to go forward and humiliate Chu Feng. Even some big shots nearby couldn't help but shake their heads secretly. Chu Feng, the director of the commune of spiritual tattooists, was really shameful. The commotion on their side attracted the attention of many people in the distance. Immediately, a middle-aged man who looked like a steward came over and asked about the situation. He said in astonishment, "Dao friend Chu Feng, may I ask who gave you this invitation letter?" Chu Feng looked at Ruan Lingdu in the distance, and then said to the middle-aged supervisor, "I come on behalf of Child Lin." The middle-aged supervisor immediately smiled. "That's right. This seat is prepared for Child Lin." Chu Feng was stunned and couldn't help but be surprised that the chief VIP position was really prepared for Lin. His entire body instantly felt relaxed, and he slowly sat down in his seat while completely ignoring the ridiculing gazes from all around him. Seeing this scene, Ruan Lingdu, who was laughing proudly, suddenly froze and his voice stopped abruptly. His mouth seemed to be stuffed with a stone, and he looked incredible. And the big shots nearby were also stunned. How could this happen? With Chu Feng's identity, how could he possibly be qualified to sit in the VIP row? Did you make a mistake? A strong unwillingness surged in Ruan Lingdu's heart. He couldn't help calling the middle-aged manager and asked with a frown, "Fellow Taoist, there's no mistake. The arrangement of the head seats this time was personally selected by the shopkeeper, and there's no room for error." The middle-aged steward replied with a smile, "But how can Chu Feng be qualified to sit there?" Ruan Lingdu's face darkened, and he was a little confused by this fact. "Oh, you're talking about that seat? It was originally prepared for young Master Lin's son. Taoist Chu Feng has come to attend the ceremony in young Master Lin's place." The middle-aged manager replied casually. Ruan Lingdu blurted out, "What bullshit, Child Lin's son? Who is he?" After that, he noticed that many great figures of the great clans in the surroundings were looking at him with strange gazes. "Wait a minute, Lin's son?" Suddenly, Ruan Lingdu completely woke up from his anger, and he couldn't help sweating all over. It turned out to be this evil star. Ruan Lingdu also heard about the fight on a rainy night a few days ago. As a counselor of Lu Wujuan, the governor of the City Lord's mansion, he even knew what Obsidian's invitation represented that night. The last battle between Lin Sun and Huang Jianshun, a young man from the Forbidden City, made Ruan Lingdu more and more aware of Lin Sun's terrible power. Even the young man from the Forbidden City couldn't do anything to him. It could be imagined how powerful Lin Sun was. "I see," Ruan Lingdu said vaguely, and finally understood why those big shots next to him looked at him with strange eyes. These guys obviously knew how powerful Lin Sun was. Even some of them had received Obsidian's invitation. When he looked at Chu Feng, who was sitting in the VIP position in the distance again, Ruan Lingdu's eyes had become extremely gloomy. Thinking that he had just laughed at Chu Feng's arrogance, Ruan Lingdu felt that his cheeks were burning, as if he had been slapped in the face invisibly. On the other hand, the expressions of those great figures were slightly unnatural. With their status, even though they could have a seat in this hall, they were still lacking if they wanted to sit at the head of the VIP seats. Now, a person like Chu Feng actually used Lin Sun's name to obtain a seat in the VIP seat. This was undoubtedly like a silent counterattack, causing them to feel uncomfortable. But they also felt strange. No matter how powerful Lin Sun was, he was just a teenager after all. Why was he qualified to sit in the VIP position? Isn't this arrangement a little too absurd? Of course, it could not be ruled out that there were other secrets in it. Perhaps in the eyes of a shopkeeper of Keystone business, Lin Sun's background was enough to have a chief VIP position. If so, it would be unusual. Lin Sun was just an unknown teenager, but he could make Obsidian's invitation appear and escort him. Later, he offended those young men of aristocratic families in the Forbidden City, so they had to give up. Until now, he even had a place in the VIP position in the centennial celebration of Keystone business. How could people not be shocked by all this? Chu Feng also sighed in his heart at the moment. It was hard to imagine how much neglect and exclusion he would suffer today without Lin Sun's invitation. Similarly, he didn't expect that the relationship between Lin Sun and Keystone business had reached such a level that Lin Sun personally arranged a chief VIP position for him. Such an honor was given to a teenager. Who wouldn't be shocked? Before long, all the distinguished guests who could participate in the celebration had arrived. There were many powerful big shots beside Chu Feng, such as Wei Lingjun, the president of Miss College, Du Dongtu, the commander of Xiling Army, Yao Tohai, the great practitioner, Shai Yutong, the young sword king, and Governor Lu Wujuan also sat next to Chu Feng. The funniest thing was that Wan Lingdu followed Lu Wujuan and had no seat. Now he could only stand on Lu Wujuan's side to serve him, and Chu Feng was sitting in front of him. This scene almost made Wan Lingdu gnash his teeth in hatred. For more than a decade, he had always humiliated Chu Feng. When was it Chu Feng's turn to sit while he was standing? If it weren't for the different occasion, Wan Lingdu would definitely leave. But now, he could only stand there like a wooden stake, accompanying Governor Lu Wujuan and waiting for the end of the celebration. Undoubtedly, this was a great torment. For Chu Feng, all this undoubtedly made him happy and grateful to Lin Sun. If it weren't for Lin Sun, how could he have such an honor today? The most interesting thing was that when Wei Lingjun, Du Dongtu, Yao Daohai, Shai Yutong, and others learned that Chu Feng came here on behalf of Lin Sun, and that his seat was originally prepared for Lin Sun, the expressions of these big shots became subtle. Wei Lingjun and Du Dongtu looked at each other and smiled. They secretly sighed that Lin Sun was really unexpected. Yao Tuahai's eyes narrowed, and a touch of complex feelings surged in his heart. There was anger and fear. In the past, how would he put an ant like Lin Sun in his eyes? But after experiencing so many things, no matter how stupid he was, he knew that this young man, who had been oppressed by him in Donglin Town, had really become different from before. However, as a practitioner of Tao Insight Realm, Yao Tuahai was afraid of the force behind Lin Sun, not Lin Sun himself. As for Shai Yutong, he just frowned and didn't say much, but he couldn't help but feel a little restless in his heart. How could it be Lin Sun again? Governor Lu Wujuan sat there silently, looking dignified and motionless. But when he heard the name Lin Sun, he couldn't help but think silently in his heart. This was the third time he had heard the name. The first time was the fight on a rainy night a few days ago. The second time was the peak duel in the arena. Now it was the third time, which made it hard for Lu Wujuan not to pay attention to it. Not long after, the centennial celebration of Keystone business came. On a high platform made of white jade in the center of the hall, the graceful figure of Mu Wansu walked out. Dressed in a black dress, her eyebrows were charming and beautiful, and her every movement revealed a mature and capable, elegant temperament, just like a black rose. That kind of charming style made people's eyes light up. Everyone realized that the celebration had finally begun. At the same time, Lin Sun, who had been in closed-door practice for a long time, also woke up from deep meditation and opened his eyes. Whoosh! In an instant, there seemed to be a burst of divine light in his eyes, cutting through the darkness in the room. At this time, Lin Sun's breath was like boiling magma, and a wisp of almost illusory azure luster lingered on the surface of his skin, clear and holy, with a kind of transcendent spirit. His black eyes were deep and clear like the stars, and there wasn't a trace of immaturity on his handsome face with distinct features any longer. He revealed a composed aura that could only be obtained through tempering himself for a long time. Finally, I've reached the perfect step. Lin Sun exhaled a long breath. Like a bolt of lightning, he tore through the air and pierced a hole in the wall. His breath was like a waterfall, and his breath was like thunder. This was the unique symbol of human gang realm that could only be obtained when one reached the perfect step. In Lin Sun's body, the pool of spiritual power transformed by the storm whirlpool was filled with cyan's spiritual power, pure, clear, and mysterious. It constantly set off circles of ripples as the whirlpool rotated. But the breath released in it was enough to make countless practitioners in the same realm feel numb and tremble. They couldn't believe that there was such a horrible and vigorous spiritual power among human gang realm practitioners in the world. Chapter 261. This closed-door training made Lin Sun's cultivation improve significantly. He reached the mastery of human gang realm, and his combat effectiveness also rose. If he met Huang Jinshan again at this time, Lin Sun was absolutely confident that he could defeat him easily without using RFS. But speaking of it, Lin Sun didn't feel too threatened when he fought with Huang Jinshan in the arena last time. The last time he defeated Huang Jinshan, it only contained 30% of the true meaning of RFS, not the real RFS. As for how strong he was now, even Lin Sun couldn't judge for a while, but at least he wouldn't have any scruples even if he met someone in Earth Gang realm. After silently experiencing the changes in his strength, Lin Sun took a deep breath and converged all his chi. In an instant, his sharpness was restrained, and his temperament returned to its former indifference. Buzz, in the room, the spirit gathering formation was put away by Lin Sun and disappeared completely. Even though he had only been in seclusion for a month, he had used up a lot of resources. First of all, he had already refined all of the cloud astral violet soul pills he had bought. At the same time, every day that the spirit gathering formation was in operation consumed 10 high-grade spirit stones. In this way, Lin Sun had spent more than 6,000 gold coins in just 1 month. Such a huge expense was absolutely unbearable for ordinary practitioners. Even those from rich and powerful families couldn't spend so many materials in a month's practice. But there was no way. Lin Sun's body with Windstorm Millstone was like a bottomless pit. While he had a strong foundation for practice, he also had to consume resources far beyond the needs of his peers. As the saying goes, everything has its advantages and disadvantages. Lin Sun needed more resources to practice since he could have the power to go against the natural order today. Otherwise, no matter how outstanding his talent and foundation were, it was doomed to be impossible to go far on the road of practice without the support of matching cultivation resources. This was the saying that a clever housewife couldn't cook without rice. Out of the room, Shu Jin, who was drinking, looked up at Lin Sun for the first time. After looking at him carefully for a moment, he murmured, "What a monster!" Lin Sun was stunned and smiled. "Why do you say so?" Shu Jin said grumpily, "I have never seen any human gang realm practitioner who can continue to cultivate for a month without eating or drinking. Some practitioners who try to do so were either possessed by the devil or exploded. Unlike you, you have been cultivating for a whole month, but nothing happened to you. On the contrary, your cultivation has improved. Aren't you a monster?" Lin Sun said seriously, "Old Jean, if you want to praise me in the future, just say it directly. Don't beat around the bush. It will be too polite." Shu Jin held his breath and rolled his eyes. "Brat, you're getting more and more shameless. Aren't you afraid of retribution for being so shameless?" Lin thought for a while and said with a smile, "It's okay. There are too many shameless people in the world. I'm not one of them." Shu Jin had no way to deal with Lin Sun. He said angrily, "Tell me, are you going to attend the centennial celebration of Keystone Business? It's not too late yet. You can still make it if you go now." Lin Sun shook his head and said, "I'm not interested in this. I've already asked Chu Feng to go for me. I come to you for something else." Shu Jin sighed. "I knew it. The more familiar I am with you, the more impolite you will be. Now, you even ask me for help as if it is a matter of course. Do you think I should keep some distance from you in the future? Lin Sun said with a smile, That's fine. But in this case, it will be difficult for me to refine a set of armor with spiritual tattoos for you in the future. After all, you have drawn a clear line between us. I can't help you even if I want to. Before Lin finished, Shu Jin felt a headache and hurriedly shouted, Brat, don't talk nonsense. Tell me what you want me to do. Lin Sun stopped and said seriously, From today on, I may need to practice for some time. It will take at least one day, and I don't know how long it will take at most. I only hope that you can guarantee that no one will disturb me during this period. Shu Jin was stunned. What's the difference between this and the 1 month you practiced before? Lin Sun said, It's different. Without your protection this time, if something happens, the consequences will be very serious. Shu Jin narrowed his eyes and vaguely realized that Lin's practice should not be as simple as cultivation. Okay, Shu Jin thought for a moment and agreed. Lin Sun breathed a sigh of relief. Today was the 3rd pass of Green Cloud Path in Heaven Accessing Place. Lin knew very well that once he entered Heaven Accessing Place, he would lose all senses of the outside world. At this time, if someone came to disturb him, it would absolutely be fatal. In the past, because he was in safe places like Feiyun Village and Bloodthirsty Camp, he didn't worry about any danger when he broke through the pass. But now it was different. There were many enemies in Mist City. They might be afraid of him and dare not attack him rashly. But what if such a thing happened? Therefore, Lin asked Shu Jin for help. Back to his room, Lin Sun sat cross-legged on the bed. His mind was clear and ethereal, and he calmly perceived the gate to heaven that had been floating in his sea of consciousness. After a long time, Lin Sun only felt that his sea of consciousness was shaking. In a trance, a familiar feeling came over him. It seemed that Lin Sun had reappeared in that mysterious space in an instant. The straight green cloud path stretched across the void, leading to a very far distance. At the end of it was the mysterious and towering gate to heaven. Standing on the green cloud path, Lin Sun looked around and couldn't help sighing with emotion. Unconsciously, it had been a whole year since the last time he broke through the pass. Soon, the familiar obscure wave swept over Lin Sun's body. Immediately, a cold and emotionless voice sounded in this world. Practitioner, the 3rd pass of Green Cloud Path is called 100 Battles. You have 3 chances to break through it. Each time you fail, you will have 7 days to adjust. If you fail all 3 times, you will lose the qualification and the Heaven Accessing Place will be sealed again. I see. Lin Sun nodded. He had been here many times and was very familiar with this voice. Let's start. Along with the voice, a dazzling light suddenly appeared in the green cloud path and instantly covered Lin Sun's figure. Enter the secret realm of 100 battles and fight with 100 strong practitioners of the secret realm. If you don't fail in 100 battles, you can pass the level smoothly. No reward. If you win 100 battles, you can pass the level smoothly. No reward. If you fail in 100 battles, you can pass the level smoothly. No reward. The cold voice kept ringing, announcing the rules of the 3rd pass of Green Cloud Path. Lin Sun found that he appeared in a huge arena, which seemed to be built in the void. Looking around, it was a vast world of nothingness. Around the arena, there were sculptures, each of which showed different shapes. Some were human, some were demon, some were ghost, some were spiritual monsters, and even some were strange creatures. Lin Sun had never seen or even heard of them. There were skeletons with 2 pairs of wings and a vertical eye between their eyebrows. There were giants with black scales all over their bodies, standing on tortoises and hanging on their ears. There were taurens with golden skin, wearing heavy armor, riding nameless fierce beasts, and holding lightning in their hands. Each of them was strange and had different shapes. They were just like the representatives of ancient creatures coming out from the endless years, which was indescribably shocking. Lin Sun glanced around and was also surprised. These sculptures were too mysterious and strange. He had never heard of such creatures in the world. There were also many legends about ancient times in the Empire, such as human beings, gods, demons, and so on. But Lin Sun couldn't combine these legends with the sculptures in front of him. It was too mysterious and too amazing. It was hard to imagine the origin of these creatures and why they appeared in the heaven-accessing place in the form of sculptures. But the cold voice only said that in this secret realm of 100 battles, he would fight with strong practitioners of the secret realm. Could it be that the so-called strong practitioners of the secret realm had something to do with these sculptures? Lin Sun felt a little uneasy. Practitioner, in this secret realm of 100 battles, you have 100 chances to fight. If you can't stick to the end, you will fail this time. Every time you fight, failure means death. After resurrection, you have a quarter of an hour to adjust. Suddenly, that chilly and empty voice resounded once more, and it described the rules of the test in detail once more. Lin Sun couldn't help being stunned. There were 3 chances in total, and each chance included 100 chances to fight. Was there such a strange way to break through? What surprised Lin Sun most was that there was a chance to resurrect after death in the battle. Isn't this a little too shocking? But when he thought about it carefully, he realized that the heaven-accessing secret land was a mysterious place, and everything that appeared in front of him must be derived from some mysterious and terrible power. In this case, the so-called death and resurrection should also be deduced by the rules of the dreamland, rather than real death and resurrection. Otherwise, all this was too against the natural order and completely broke the rules of heaven and earth. Lin Sun carefully pondered the rules and found that even if he failed 100 times, he could pass the test smoothly, which was a little strange. If so, with the idea of failing 100 times, he could easily pass the test by virtue of the resurrection condition in the rules. But immediately, Lin Sun frowned. It couldn't be that easy. There were only 3 chances to pass the test, and each chance contained 100 fighting opportunities. If it was so easy, the conditions for passing the test wouldn't be so complicated. Buzz. Chapter 262. The statue burst into pieces, and a snake-headed creature with 4 arms suddenly came to life. Lin Sun's pupil shrank, and he became alert. Buzz. With another strange buzz, a plain saber suddenly appeared in Lin Sun's hand. At this time, the creature had already flown to the arena, and a pair of scarlet eyes instantly locked on Lin Sun, looking ferocious. Its 4 rock-like arms grasped a peculiar long saber, which was 3 meters long and glowed with frightening bloody light. Just standing there casually, there was a horrible, bloodthirsty atmosphere. The first battle, against the strong snake spirit, a hollow voice that was cold like ice suddenly resounded in the heavens and the earth of the arena. Boom! Before his voice fell, the snake spirit clan powerhouse suddenly let out a loud roar and slashed out with the blood saber in his hand. In an instant, the sky and the earth changed color, and an indescribable, horrible atmosphere enveloped Lin Sun. In a trance, he seemed to see stars suddenly falling from the boundless night sky, like falling comets, to destroy the world and shatter the universe. This scene seemed so shocking, yet so familiar. Wasn't this RFS? As soon as this thought flashed in Lin Sun's mind, he felt a tearing pain all over his body. The feeling was like his soul was torn apart and his body was split apart. Lin Sun had no time to react at all. His eyes turned black, and he immediately lost consciousness. After a long time, when Lin Sun woke up, he found himself still standing on the arena, surrounded by strange statues, as if nothing had happened. However, when Lin Sun's eyes fell on the statue of the snake spirit with 4 arms, his face turned pale in an instant. In his mind, the scenes of the previous battle emerged like a tide. They were so clear that they were branded in his heart like a nightmare. That saber, it was horrible. The more he thought about it, the colder he felt. When the saber fell, he felt the breath of death for the first time. It was so strong and horrible that it was hard to describe it if he didn't experience it himself. RFS reaching for the stars. That guy also knows RFS reaching for the stars, and the power he exerted is more than twice as strong as mine. Lin Sun was shocked. The first chance to fight was decided in an instant, and what defeated him was his most familiar saber play. This hit Lin Sun hard, especially at the moment when he was killed just now. The feeling of terror, abruptness, and despair made Lin Sun realize for the first time what a real moment of life and death was. Too scary. If it really happened in reality, would there still be any possibility of resurrection? Resurrection? Wait a minute. In an instant, Lin Sun suddenly realized a problem. According to the rules, he would be given a quarter of an hour to rest after each battle. In other words, it wouldn't be long before the second battle would begin. This won't do. I must figure out what exactly this test is. If the experts represented by the 100 statues on the arena are as strong as that Serpent Spirit Clan expert, then I practically have no chance of victory. Lin Sun took a deep breath, tried to calm himself down, and began to think quickly. There are 100 chances to fight in the secret realm of 100 battles. The test should be related to fighting. Apart from cultivation, fighting skills, martial arts, and experience may all be the key to the test. So what on earth is the test? According to the fighting power shown by the snake spirit, even if I have the power to fight back, I am doomed to be no match for him. So the test must not be fighting skills. The disparity in strength is too great. This is just the first battle, and there are still 99 more battles. No matter how superb my fighting skills are, I can do nothing in the face of absolute power. In this case, the test is fighting skills? Yes, RFS reaching for the stars. Suddenly, Lin Sun realized a key problem. As soon as the snake spirit attacked, it happened to be reaching for the stars that he was most familiar with, which was obviously abnormal. As Lin Sun pondered, time flew by quickly. Not long after, with a buzzing sound, another statue suddenly broke, and a strange creature woke up. This was an over 3 m tall man with a robust and slender figure. He had handsome and fair facial features that seemed as if they were carved by a blade. Only his eyes were suffused with a mysterious blue color, and his entire body was suffused with strands of flames that seemed like black mist. The second battle, against the Demon Spirit Clan, when he heard the voice, Lin Sun held a saber in his hand again. But this time he was ready. His chi was running and boiling like lava. Kill! With a cold and stern voice, the strong demon spirit strode forward. His slender white palm suddenly turned into a saber and gently cut down in the void. His movements were clean, neat, accurate, and simple to the extreme, but there was a kind of tyrannical feeling that went straight to people's heart. At this moment, Lin Sun didn't have time to resist. He only felt that his eyes were blurred, and he seemed to see countless stars falling from the eternal night sky like a rain of light from the Milky Way. The horrible and desperate breath of death surged into Lin Sun's heart again, making him feel cold all over. His mind suffered an unprecedented impact. Immediately, the boundless pain hit him, and he died again. When he woke up, Lin Sun's face had become extremely gloomy. Although he was resurrected, again with his body intact and his soul as before, there were still the emotions of fear, despair, and helplessness from death in his mind. As long as he was distracted, he would think of the scenes when he was killed by the snake spirit and the demon spirit. It was like a shadow that shrouded his mind and couldn't be dispelled. Lin Sun knew that if he couldn't get rid of this shadow of death, it would become a devil in his heart. The more it accumulated, the more dangerous it would be for him. In serious cases, it would even make him collapse completely and lose all his cultivation. Through these two examples of failure and death, Lin Sun had vaguely understood why the rule stated that even if he failed in 100 battles, as long as he could hold on to the end, he would still pass the test. The reason was that if he failed again and again, the impact of death would continue to accumulate, which would only make him collapse in advance. He couldn't bear it at all and would be eliminated. Therefore, if he continued to fight like this, it was almost impossible for him to hold on to the end. Just think about it. If even one's fighting spirit and state of mind were to collapse, and one's cultivation went berserk, what else could one use to fight? And if he didn't want to be possessed by the devil, he could only take the initiative to admit defeat. This was the most terrifying part of the third test of Green Cloud Path, 100 battles. Compare with it. The first two tests of Green Cloud Path were not worth mentioning. How could it be so cruel and perverted? Which bastard created such a barrier back then? It's simply insane. Realizing all this, Lin Sun's face became more and more gloomy. Even if he had made full preparations before, he found that no matter how much preparation he had made, it was useless in the face of secret realm of 100 battles. Lin Sun even doubted that the third test of Green Cloud Path was so difficult. Wouldn't the following tests be more and more abnormal? A wave of fluctuation reminded Lin Sun that the third battle was about to begin. This time, his opponent was a giant covered with black scales who stepped on a green turtle and had a snake hanging on his ear. He was called Pale Scale Clan. When all this happened, Lin Sun learned from the previous two lessons. Without hesitation, he directly used his most powerful trump card, RFS, reaching for the stars. However, after only one confrontation, Lin Sun was killed on the spot again without any room for struggle. He was defeated by the same RFS. Damn it, it's impossible to pass this test. When Lin Sun was resurrected, he couldn't help cursing. He was really angry. He thought that if he reached the mastery of Human Gang Realm and mastered RFS, he would have a great chance to pass the third level of Green Cloud Path. Who would have thought that the reality was so cruel? The most troublesome thing for Lin Sun was that every failure was like being killed alive. The fear of death was like a ghost, constantly accumulating in his heart, constantly eroding and impacting his reason and consciousness. This was the devil in his heart. If he could get rid of it, even if he failed every time, he could naturally persist to the end and pass the test smoothly. But how could it be so easy to get rid of the devil in his heart? There were too many practitioners in the world. Once they encountered a major setback on the road of cultivation, they would be unable to recover and completely lose their mind. Eventually, their cultivation would collapse, they would lose their cultivation, become disabled, or die directly. Why? It was because they couldn't defeat the devil in their heart. Now, Lin Sun also faced this kind of danger. The most terrible thing was that the setback he suffered was directly facing death and experiencing death. Although he could be resurrected, the impact of the shadow of death was really there. It could be imagined what a terrible blow it would cause to Lin Sun if the devil in his heart accumulated again and again. However, Lin Sun was never a person who was willing to admit defeat easily. After realizing the seriousness of the problem, he forced himself to abandon all distractions in his mind and began to think about a solution. Instead of waiting for death, it was better to go all out and fight. Instead of being dissatisfied with the cruelty of this test, it was better to accept all this and then change it all. The most terrible thing was to be defeated by setbacks and failures when he didn't try his best. How could such a person become a real strong? RFS death, the devil in the heart, is left in my heart. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep. He stood alone on the arena, as if he had turned into a statue, motionless. In his heart, he was madly thinking about the solution. The devil in my heart is caused by death, and death is caused by RFS. If I want to defeat and get rid of the devil in my heart, I can only start with RFS. Lin Sun vaguely grasped the key of the problem. But how can I solve it? Chapter 263. To defeat the devil in his heart, he needed to be better than his opponent in the comprehension and control of RFS. This was the most direct way that Lin Sun could think of after thinking for a long time. It was easy to say, but it was not easy to do it. The cultivation of martial arts was divided into 4 levels: initial glimpse, nuance, accuracy, and mastery. Now Lin Sun's control of RFS barely reached the level of nuance. He began to understand and comprehend the essence of RFS, but there was still a long way to go before he could master it. In contrast, the 3 opponents in the previous battles, whether it was the strong man of Snake Spirit Clan, Demon Spirit Clan, or the strong man of Pale Scale Clan, all displayed RFS at least at the level of accuracy. Under such circumstances, it was difficult for Lin Sun to master RFS to the same level in a short time, let alone surpass his opponent. But at present, this was the only feasible way. Otherwise, he would have to wait for the devil in his heart to take root and his state of mind to collapse completely. The most terrible thing was that if he failed in the end, he would not only lose the opportunity to enter the heaven-accessing place, but also leave behind the devil in his heart, which would seriously erode his state of mind. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun had to fight anyway. Not long after, the familiar fluctuation sounded on the platform again. The fourth battle was about to begin. Lin Sun immediately calmed down, and his heart was burning with the desire to fight. Since it was a battle, and he was most familiar with RFS, it was undoubtedly the best learning opportunity from another point of view. The opponent's control of RFS and the power it exerted might bring him the most direct death blow every time. But at the same time, he could also directly and comprehensively experience the real mystery and power of RFS. If he could learn from the opponent's strong points to make up for his weak points, he might really have a chance to turn the tables. Lin Sun thought so. While Lin Sun was fighting, the celebration in Keystone business was in full swing. By the time the night fell, the celebration was coming to an end. But none of the distinguished guests present was in low spirits. On the contrary, as the end of the celebration approached, they became more and more expectant. Because soon, Lu Qingyan, the world-famous legendary art practitioner, would perform on the stage as the finale. This was undoubtedly what all the distinguished guests were looking forward to the most. To be honest, in this celebration, Keystone Business arranged all kinds of extremely wonderful links. For example, they invited Liang Daqian, the descendant of the puppet family, which was second to none in the empire, to perform a puppet battle play. Thousands of vivid puppets, large and small, were controlled by Liang Daqian alone. They fought and killed each other, just like a real war. There were golden spears and iron horses everywhere, and the smoke of war was billowing, which fascinated people and made them exclaim that it was amazing. Another example was the 100 Birds Reverence of the Phoenix, performed by the beast-taming clans. The beast-taming clans merely utilized techniques to draw over 100 spirit birds that fluttered about on the high platform and sang loudly. Their superb beast-taming techniques gave rise to wave after wave of uproar in the surroundings. In short, the scale of the celebration this time was so high and grand that it was absolutely worthy of being a first-rate event in the world. Even the prominent figures present felt that this trip was worthwhile. Only Ruan Lingdu felt uncomfortable, as if he had eaten a fly. Since the beginning of the celebration, he had been uneasy and wanted to eat Chu Feng, who was sitting in the chief VIP seat in front of him. But he could only think like this. This occasion was so grand that even he dared not act rashly. From this, it could be seen how much grievance and anger had accumulated in Ruan Lingdu's heart for him to hold on until now. Chu Feng, on the other hand, had been watching and admiring happily since the beginning of the ceremony. He looked as if he was enjoying himself, especially when he was sure that Ruan Lingdu had been standing stupidly behind him like a wooden stake. Chu Feng felt more and more happy. However, when it was announced on the high platform that Lu Qingyan was going to appear, both Ruan Lingdu, who was angry and unwilling, and Chu Feng, who was happy and comfortable, calmed down their minds, threw away all distractions, and looked at Lu Qingyan together. It seemed that Lu Qingyan could make them temporarily forget each other's hatred. Not only that, at this moment, in a hall that could accommodate tens of thousands of people, all the guests stopped what they were doing and talking, and their eyes all gathered on the high platform. Because Lu Qingyan was going to appear. This was the charm of Lu Qingyan. This world-famous and legendary art practitioner had too many dazzling halos. Now, she would appear in front of them. Who wouldn't be excited? Even those sophisticated and dignified big shots couldn't help showing curiosity at this moment. It seemed that they wanted to know whether Lu Qingyan deserved her reputation. The atmosphere in the hall had actually become perfectly silent at this moment, and it was extremely quiet. Not long after, the high platform that was constructed from white jade was enshrouded with strands of light that curled up like a sea of clouds and was suffused with an illusory sheen. At the same time, strands of chilly and pleasing music sounded out like a stream in an empty gorge, and it resounded out amidst this silent atmosphere. The music was beautiful and ethereal, like the clear cries of red-crowned cranes dancing in the sky, or the whistling of the wind when the bamboo forest swayed. Sometimes it was like the melodious sound of camel bells in the desert, and sometimes it was like the sound of waves on the blue sea. In a trance, everyone seemed to be in another world. They saw the haze was scattered, and the sun and moon were shaking. Thousands of old cypresses were green in the middle of the sky with rain. Thousands of secluded bamboo were green with smoke in the valley. Outside the door, there were exotic flowers and brocade, and the jade grass beside the bridge was fragrant. The stone cliff was abrupt, and the moss was moist. The hanging wall was high, and the moss was long. Sometimes cranes could be heard, and their cries shook the sky. Every time, phoenixes could be seen, and their feathers were colorful. Black apes and white deer could be seen, and golden lions and jade elephants could be seen. Such a mysterious scene was like a fairyland, which shocked all the big shots present. They couldn't believe that this was a wonderful scene produced by a piece of music. The music came from the ears, and the appearance came from the heart. Lu Qingyin hadn't been seen yet, but the music alone had been so shocking that all the distinguished guests present couldn't help admiring her. When Lu Qingyin came out, all the people present couldn't help but look at her with a touch of burning admiration. On the high platform made of white jade, a dreamlike slender figure stood upright on the high platform, enshrouded in a gorgeous and colorful mist. Different from the appearance of a woman disguised as a man that Lin Sun had seen before, Lu Qingyin was dressed in a plain white dress and green cloth shoes. She was dressed very simply, without any decoration or embellishment. Her long lavender hair hung down to her slender waist. Her eyes were crystal clear, and her skin was so delicate that it could be broken by the wind. Her delicate and beautiful face had a unique aura as cold as snow. This was Lu Qingyin, the soul singer in the hearts of the young people in the world. She had a unique voice and was famous all over the empire. Lu Qingyin, Lu Qingyin, Lu Qingyin. In the hall, there was a sudden burst of excited shouts. Most of them were from rich and powerful families. Their faces were full of excitement and fanaticism, regardless of their manners. But no one scolded them. Although the big shots present didn't say much, they were also shocked by this scene and sighed with emotion. Lu Qingyin lived up to her reputation. As soon as she appeared, she was as amazing as the rumor said. After Lu Qingyin appeared, she didn't say much. She glanced at the audience with her clear eyes and then withdrew her gaze. No one noticed that when she glanced at Chu Feng's position, she paused imperceptibly. There was a trace of surprise and a flash of loss in her eyes. Immediately, she said in a clear voice, "Today is the centennial celebration of Keystone Business. I'm honored to participate in it. I have no way to repay you. I can only present a song to express my congratulations. Secret Realm of 100 Battles. Kill." When another concealed realm expert transformed from statue came to life, Lin Sun did not hesitate and slashed down with his saber. RFS. At this moment, Lin Sun looked extremely calm, but there was an extraordinary ruthlessness in his calmness. He gathered all his strength in this strike. Boom! With an earth-shattering collision sound, Lin Sun was killed on the spot again without exception. But it didn't take long for him to resurrect with the shadow of death. This was his 27th failure. Every failure brought him endless pain and fear of death. The experience of life and death was more torturous than purgatory. However, as the number of failures increased, Lin Sun gradually mastered some tricks. He knew that every time he failed, the shadow of death in his heart would increase a little and keep attacking his mind. However, as long as he operated the meditating magic and visualized the star cycle, he would be able to suppress the evil spirits in his heart without thinking about them. Of course, it was just suppression, not expulsion. But this method was only suitable for a quarter of an hour after each death. Once in a battle, meditating magic would be of no help. But even so, it was enough for Lin Sun to take a breather. And through these battles and deaths, Lin Sun also comprehended many mysteries and true meanings of RFS between life and death, and made some progress. Without hesitation, Lin Sun sat cross-legged on the ground and ran meditating magic. His sea of consciousness was empty, and he visualized the star circulation to suppress the evil spirits in his heart. At this time, Lin Sun was in a strange state. He kept fighting, facing death, resurrecting, running meditating magic to suppress the evil spirits in his heart, and then started a new battle. It was like a cycle, constantly repeating. But the opponents in each battle would be different, and the momentum and style of RFS displayed by each opponent were completely different. After a long time, when Lin Sun was about to fight for the 47th battle, he suddenly frowned. The shadow of death accumulated in his heart had reached a limit. As soon as he lost the suppression of meditating magic, he was about to erupt like a volcano and was about to lose control. However, Lin Sun had already predicted that such a thing would happen, and he even made full preparation for it. Without any hesitation, he said directly, "I give up this chance to pass the test." Chapter 264. The night was as clear as water. Shu Jin was lying in the corner, snoring loudly. Suddenly, Shu Jin opened his eyes. At this moment, he was keenly aware that there was a sharp saber intent in Lin's room, full of tyrannical and destructive aura. Damn it! Shu Jin's heart thumped. The next moment, he had disappeared and rushed to Lin's room. But before he got close, a flash of saber light suddenly appeared in Lin's room and split the room into two. Seeing that the saber light was about to hit the ground and cause more damage, Shu Jin suddenly stretched out his palm and pressed hard in the void. A shapeless force surged into appearance and forcefully restrained that wisp of blade light, causing it to stop in midair, and then it rumbled as it exploded into pieces and vanished. Boom! The walls of the house that was split in half collapsed and were about to be completely destroyed. Shu Jin cursed Lin Sun in his heart. Was he playing demolition in the middle of the night? If he hadn't taken action in time, just now, the power of the saber alone would have been enough to destroy the courtyard and even affect the buildings and streets further away. At this time, Lin's figure had rushed out. At this time, he was surrounded by killing intent, and his eyes were full of surging fighting intent. He was like a peerless saber unsheathed from the abyss, ready to kill the world. Shu Jin's pupils shrank, and his expression became solemn in an instant. Something was wrong. This boy seemed to be possessed by the devil in his heart. With Shu Jin's eyesight, he could naturally see at a glance that Lin was like a powder keg at this time. His mind was crazy, and his mind was clouded. His chi and killing intent were overflowing on the surface of his body. It was obvious that he was about to be possessed by the devil. In cultivation, there was only one reason that would cause such signs: the devil in his heart. Damn it, this boy just started his closed-door training today and seriously asked me to protect him. Now, he has encountered the karma of cultivation. Shu Jin's heart sank, and he felt it was extremely tricky. The devil in one's heart was illusory and seemingly invisible, but it was the most terrible karma on the road of cultivation. Once the devil in one's heart appeared, one's life and death would be out of control. If it was light, one's cultivation would be destroyed, and if it was heavy, one's body would disappear. The only one who could resolve the devil in one's heart was himself. No one else could help him at all. Kill! Lin Sun roared, his killing intent surging like a waterfall, and the saber in his hand roared wildly. Shu Jin gritted his teeth and rushed forward. He pinched Lin's neck with his palms and fingers before he could react. With a bang, Lin Sun's body softened and collapsed to the ground. However, he didn't lose consciousness. He struggled to get up, and his demented, demonic appearance was like a completely different person from before. At this point, Shu Jin could be sure that Lin's inner demons were too deep this time, and the situation was so serious that it was critical. What to do? Shu Jin's expression kept changing. He appreciated Lin Sun very much and thought that Lin Sun was a peerless genius in both cultivation and spiritual tattoos. It would be too much of a pity if such a fellow were to self-destruct. But this time, Lin Sun was facing the heart devil, and even Shu Jin couldn't do anything to help. Looks like I can only bring him to that place. Shu Jin gritted his teeth and seemed to make a decision. He immediately picked up Lin Sun in his hand and was about to leave, but Lin Sun suddenly said in a hoarse voice, "Jin, put me down. Let me do it myself." Shu Jin was shocked. He looked down and saw that although Lin Sun looked crazy, there was a trace of clarity in his deep eyes. However, Lin Sun was overflowing with violent killing intent. His expression was sometimes distorted and sometimes ferocious, which made people worry whether he could keep this trace of clarity. "Hurry up!" Lin Sun roared hoarsely like a beast. Shu Jin sighed in his heart and let go of his hand. Lin Sun sat on the ground with a thud, took a few deep breaths, closed his eyes directly, and ran meditating magic. Shu Jin didn't dare to be careless. He guarded Lin Sun on one side. As long as he found something wrong, he would immediately take action and take Lin Sun away. As time went by, Lin Sun, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, was still full of killing intent, but he didn't show any crazy actions, which made Shu Jin feel relieved. Immediately, Shu Jin's eyes became complicated. The heart devil was extremely terrible. No matter who encountered it, he would be in danger. This time, could Lin Sun resolve this disaster with his own strength? Shu Jin didn't know. He sat quietly at the stone table and looked at Lin Sun in silence. Keystone business. It was late at night, but the hall was boiling, and the atmosphere reached an unprecedented height. Many people from many years ago were shouting excitedly. Even those great figures from the rich and powerful families were all stirred up at this moment, their thoughts running wild. On the high platform made of white jade, Lu Qingyan had already left. But in the hall, no one was willing to leave. It seemed that they were all recalling the wonderful music just now. Flying light, persuade you to have a glass of wine. I don't know how high the sky is and how thick the earth is. I only see the moon is cold and the sun is warm. Eating bears makes you fat, eating frogs makes you thin. Where is the divine Lord? Where is Tai? There's a wood in the east and a candled dragon in its mouth. I will cut off the dragon's feet and eat the dragon's flesh, so that it can't return in the morning and fall in the night. Naturally, the old will not die, and the young will not cry. What is eating gold and swallowing white jade? Who is like Childrun, riding a green donkey in the cloud? Under the great way, many bones are stagnant, but the road of Tao is not empty. Flying Light Song. This was the music that Lu Qingyan would sing at the finale tonight. It was rumored that this song was an ancient tune handed down from ancient times. Interpreted by Lu Qingyan with new lyrics, it had undergone a rebirth, which was too wonderful for words. In the hearts of those young practitioners, the most favorite was naturally the sentence, "I will cut off the dragon's feet and eat the dragon's flesh, so that it can't return in the morning and fall in the night." How domineering and heroic it was. She wanted to cut off the candle dragon and eat the dragon's flesh, so that there was no day and night, and time was still. For those big shots, what made them most sad was, I don't know how high the sky is and how thick the earth is. I only see the moon is cold and the sun is warm, but the sun is cold and the sun is warm. How much frustration, struggle, helplessness, and unwillingness were expressed by the word fry. As for Governor Liu Wujuan, Wei Lingjin, president of Miss College, and Du Dongtu, the commander of Xiling Army, who had already reached a high level in cultivation, what shocked them most was the last sentence of the music. Under the Great Way, many bones are stagnant, but the road of Tao is not empty. The higher one's cultivation was, the more clearly he could find that under the vast Great Way, there were only bones left in the dust. No one knew how many powerful practitioners died because they could not reach the Great Way. This caused one to be unable to help, but wonder if the end of the path towards the Tao was all an illusion. A piece of music resonated with all the people in the hall. Only Lu Qingyan, an artistic practitioner, could display such superb attainments in music. Many people were sure that from tomorrow on, this Flying Light Song would cause a sensation, sweep the world, and be passed on by word of mouth and enjoyed by the world. At this time, Lu Qingyan had left Keystone business alone in the chariot. For her, today's song was just a fulfillment of an invitation, so she was not too happy. especially when she learned that Lin Sun had given the invitation letter to others, but he did not show up in person. Lu Qingyin couldn't help feeling a little upset. Granny Wind, you said that all the people who should come to this celebration are here, but I didn't see Child Lin. Is he still angry with me? In the chariot, Lu Qingyin suddenly said, "Why is this bastard angry with you, miss?" Granny Wind was stunned and confused. Last time, he fought with Huang Jianxin passively, which made the whole city know. If it weren't for me, how could he have been involved in this? Lu Qingyin pursed her lips. She did feel a little guilty. Lin Sun kindly helped her repair the ancient rhythm ocarina, but because of her, he was involved in the dispute with those aristocratic children, which made her want to find an opportunity to make up for it. Originally, she thought that if Lin Sun participated in the celebration today, she would find a chance to apologize to him when she sang. Who would have thought that Lin Sun did not come? This made Lu Qingyin wonder if Lin Sun had a grudge against her because of what happened last time. Granny Wind said disapprovingly, "Miss, you think too much. That boy defeated Huang Jianxin. Don't you see that he is now very famous in Mist City?" Lu Qingyin shook her head. That's another thing. If Child Lin had lost at that time, his reputation would have been ruined. Who would bear the consequences for him? Granny Wind raised her eyebrows. "Miss, what's wrong with you?" She saw that Lu Qingyin seemed to have something on her mind. "I want to talk to Child Lin and apologize to him in person. Otherwise, it will make me feel uneasy." Lu Qingyin thought for a while and said seriously. Granny Wind asked suspiciously, "You really don't have any other ideas?" Lu Qingyin was stunned and glared at Granny Wind reproachfully. "Granny, you think too much again." Granny Wind was quite worried. She was experienced and knew very well that Lu Qingyin's state was not right. If she had some entanglement with Lin Sun, something bad might happen. In this world, emotions were the most complicated thing. Often because of a careless little thing, a relationship might arise. And this was what Granny Wind was most worried about. The only thing that reassured her was that at least until now, Lu Qingyin had not shown any too unusual behavior. Otherwise, she would definitely take Lu Qingyin away immediately and completely eliminate the possibility of contact between her and Lin Sun. What a joke. Lu Qingyin was one of the best artistic practitioners in the empire. She was well known all over the world. No one knew how many princes and nobles admired her. How could a treacherous bastard like Lin Sun be qualified to be with her? Granny Wind had decided that as long as she was here, she would never let this thing happen. "Granny, what do you think?" Lu Qingyin looked at Granny Wind with a slight pleading look. It's so late today. How about another day?" Granny Wind hesitated. "Let's do it tonight. Anyway, we have nothing to do. We can also take this opportunity to see Master Sun and see when the ancient rhythm ocarina can be repaired." Lu Qingyin said seriously. Granny Wind thought for a while. Looking at the pleading look between Lu Qingyin's smooth eyebrows, her heart finally softened and she said, "Okay." Immediately, the chariot changed direction and drove to the place where Lin Sun lived. Chapter 265. Lin Sun sat quietly, and the wonderful image of the universe void and the circulation of stars appeared in his mind. This was the meditating magic, star circulation, which could help him visualize himself, guard and nourish his spirit. In his mind, the shadows of death collided with each other, producing dark emotions such as terror, despair, and death, which were constantly fermenting and causing chaos. Each shadow of death represented a scene in a battle. Different strong creatures, different styles of RFS, and different feelings of death. Everything turned into the power of the heart devil, constantly impacting the mind. It could be imagined how dangerous and horrible this scene was. If it were an ordinary practitioner, he would have already been unable to bear it, and his mind would collapse and be completely possessed by the devil. Although Lin Sun did not fall into such a situation for the time being, the situation was not optimistic and could even be described as precarious. At this time, he was like being in a sea of fire at the tip of a knife. He could only rely on the power of meditating magic to get rid of distracting thoughts and ensure that his consciousness would not be eroded by the heart devil. But if this situation continued, his mind would collapse sooner or later, and the heart devil would spread all over his body. At that time, no matter how powerful he was doomed to be helpless. What should he do? In Lin Sun's sea of consciousness, the image of star circulation appeared, which kept his consciousness absolutely clear and calm like ice and snow. He could perceive that his mind was on the verge of collapse. The shadows of death accumulated together, constantly fermenting and erupting, and were about to break through the blockage of his mind. If he wanted to change all this, he must drive out all the shadows of death. RFS. Lin Sun silently recalled the mystery of Tianyuan's saber play in his mind. As early as when he entered the secret realm of 100 battles, he had already determined that if he wanted to drive out the heart devil, he must be better than his opponent in the understanding and control of RFS. Because the inner demon was caused by death, and death was caused by RFS. If he could suppress the opponent in the control of RFS, it would be enough to shatter the shadow of death, so that he would no longer have to fear, unwillingness, and despair, and finally completely erase the inner demon. It didn't take long for Lin Sun to give up looking for the answer from Tianyuan's saber play, because there were only so many mysteries in the secret method, and the key depended on his own understanding and control. If I can pick out those death shadows one by one and kill them individually, I might be able to solve this crisis. An idea suddenly came to Lin Sun's mind, and he fell into contemplation. Doing this was very dangerous. The slightest bit of carelessness could cause one's mind to be completely corroded by one's inner demons and fall into eternal damnation. But if he didn't do this, it would be no different from waiting for death. What to do? For the first time in his life, Lin Sun was caught in a dilemma. When the chariot arrived at the courtyard where Lin Sun lived at night, Lu Qingyan got off the chariot and asked curiously, "Master Sun and Child Lin live here? Great masters hide in the city. This Master Sun is not simple. He only accepted a disciple, but it seems that he is too incompetent." When it came to Master Sun, Granny Wind admired him quite a lot. A few days ago, she witnessed Master Sun refining a peerless spiritual treasure. Lu Qingyan smiled lightly. "Grandma, let's go now. I also want to see the elegant demeanor of Master Sun." As he spoke, he walked towards the courtyard gate. But at this moment, Granny Wind seemed to notice something. Her eyes suddenly narrowed, and she said, "Miss, wait." With a swish, she stood in front of Lu Qingyan. There is a murderous intent lingering in this courtyard. Something seems wrong. Lu Qingyan was stunned. At this time, Shu Jin appeared in front of the courtyard. Seeing Granny Wind and a girl, he couldn't help frowning. "Crazy woman, it's late at night. What are you doing here?" Granny Wind snorted coldly. "Do you think I want to come? By the way, what's the matter with a murderous intent in the courtyard? Are you fighting with someone?" Shu Jin shook his head and didn't explain. "Granny, do you know this senior?" Lu Qingyan couldn't help asking. Granny Wind didn't explain Shu Jin's identity to Lu Qingyan. Instead, she said, "Shu Jin, we are here to visit Master Sun tonight." "Please make an exception," Shu Jin interrupted. "No, Master Sun is not available tonight." Granny Wind's face darkened. Shu Jin didn't give her face at all. When she was about to say something, Lu Qingyan spoke first. "Senior, is Child Lin here?" Shu Jin was startled. "Crazy woman, is this girl Lu Qingyan?" Granny Wind said coldly, "It's none of your business. Is the little bastard Lin Sun here?" Shu Jin hesitated. He didn't want to be entangled with Granny Wind at this time. But if he didn't answer, according to Granny Wind's character, she would definitely not agree. Suddenly, Shu Jin thought of something and said, "Come with me." Saying this, he turned and walked into the courtyard. Granny Wind and Lu Qingyan looked at each other and followed him in. As soon as they entered the courtyard, they saw Lin sitting cross-legged in meditation. "What?" Granny Wind's eyes narrowed. She sensed a raging murderous intent from Lin. It seemed that something was wrong. Lu Qingyan also seemed to see something, and her starry eyes were full of surprise. "Heart devil?" Granny Wind asked. Shu Jin nodded. It seems that something went wrong during cultivation. His voice was low and heavy. Granny Wind originally wanted to ridicule Lin Sun, but when she saw Shu Jin's expression, she immediately knew that the problem should be extremely serious. She stopped thinking and frowned. This boy is only in the human gang realm and is not qualified to touch the great way between heaven and earth. According to common sense, it is almost impossible for the heart devil to enter his body. Could it be that there is something wrong with his cultivation method? Shu Jin invited Granny Wind in to see if there was a way to help Lin with her wisdom. Hearing this, he suddenly became spirited and said, "Crazy woman, do you have a solution?" Granny Wind stepped forward and stared at Lin Sun for a long time. Finally, she shook her head and said, "No, this boy's heart devil is so deep that he is on the verge of collapse. Even if a life-death realm king comes, he could do nothing about it." Shu Jin's face was suddenly covered with a layer of haze. Was this boy completely finished? Although the heart devil must be eliminated by himself, it doesn't mean that we can't help him. Lu Qingyan, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke. Her starry eyes were full of wisdom. It seemed that she had thought of a way. This shocked Shu Jin, and he asked, "How can I help?" Granny Wind's face changed, and she said, "Miss, with your current cultivation, you can't use this kind of secret skill." This made Shu Jin more certain that this beautiful girl in front of him might really be able to help Lin's son. "Granny, I want to have a try." Lu Qingyan bit her cherry lips and said in a clear and sweet voice with a touch of firmness, "If you don't help him now, child Lin will be completely finished." "Miss," Granny Wind was extremely anxious, but Shu Jin interrupted her. "Crazy woman, why don't you let this girl have a try? You know nothing." Granny Wind scolded. Obviously, she was furious. It seemed that if Shu Jin dared to say more, she would fight him to the death. At this moment, Lu Qingyan seemed surprisingly calm. Her speech and behavior inadvertently carried a touch of indescribable majesty. "Granny, this matter is up to me. You don't have to say anything more." Granny Wind's face suddenly changed. After a long time, she sighed and said, "Forget it, forget it." Shu Jin secretly breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, he couldn't help but be surprised that the problem that even he and Granny Wind found difficult seemed to be unable to baffle the girl in front of him. This was too incredible. As far as Shu Jin knew, although Lu Qingyan was famous all over the world and had a dazzling halo, she was after all an artistic practitioner. Judging from her cultivation, it seemed that she was only in Heaven Gang realm, one step away from Sea Spirit realm. But now, she actually had a way to help Lin's son, who was possessed by the heart devil. Who wouldn't be surprised? At this time, Lu Qingyan was sitting on a stone chair on the side of the courtyard, holding a verdant bamboo flute in her slender hand. She put it to her lips and blew it gently. The sound of the flute was ethereal and ethereal, like a primitive sound from ancient times. It was indescribably mysterious and desolate. In an instant, Shu Jin sensed that there seemed to be an additional indescribable power in this courtyard. It seemed to be a copious amount of vitality, causing beautiful flowers to grow on the ground in the blink of an eye. Stalks of grass seemed to be cheering as they swayed in the night wind. On the other hand, in the sky, the silver starlight was like mist drifting down and enveloping the courtyard. It was like a dream, and it was indescribably ethereal. Shu Jin was shocked. What kind of music was this? Even he felt that his whole body was transparent at this moment. His mind seemed to be gently wiped by a soft force, and all distracting thoughts disappeared, becoming clear and empty. Looking at Granny Wind, Lin Sun found that her expression was extremely complicated, with anxiety, gratification, worry, and distress. The world seemed to be completely quiet at this moment. The flowers and plants in the courtyard were swaying. The starlight was overflowing, and wisps of ethereal and desolate flute were spreading. The girl beside the stone chair was dressed in a plain white dress. Her long lavender hair fell to her waist. Her starry eyes were sparkling and calm. Sitting there casually, she was playing a verdant bamboo flute. She was as beautiful as a painting. In the end, Lin Sun decided to stake everything on one throw. He had no time to waste. He had to go all out. In his mind, the consciousness as calm as snow began to spread, cautiously approaching the demons in his mind that were constantly in conflict and fermenting. If he could pick out a single shadow of death to crack and erase, this test would be a success. If not, it would mean his mind would completely collapse. Therefore, Lin Sun dared not to be careless. However, before his consciousness could approach the rampaging shadows of death, an indescribable power of emptiness and desolation suddenly surged into his mind. What was this? Lin Sun's consciousness suddenly trembled, and he almost lost control of it. He was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. But in the next moment, he was completely stunned. At this moment, the numerous shadows of death that were colliding ceaselessly actually seemed as if they'd been poisoned, and they strangely calmed down. They were like ferocious beasts that had laid dormant, and they didn't possess the imposing aura of intense conflict from before any longer. In an instant, Lin Sun realized that the opportunity had come. No matter where the mysterious, ethereal, and desolate force came from, how could he miss such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Whoosh! A wisp of consciousness suddenly swept out and shrouded a shadow of death. Chapter 266. When his consciousness struck like a sharp blade and shrouded the shadow of death, Lin Sun felt as if he had returned to the secret realm of 100 battles. His opponent was the strong man of Snake Spirit Clan. He had the head of a snake and the body of a human. He held a bloody saber in his forearms and chopped out RFS. Such a familiar scene made Lin Sun clearly remember his shock, unwillingness, despair, and helplessness when he was killed by this saber. This was the shadow of death, a residual demonic thought in his mind. Kill. The strong man of Snake Spirit Clan had come to kill. A saber appeared in Lin Sun's hand. His eyes were like lightning and full of killing intent. He also used RFS to kill. Boom! The two collided, bursting out a rain of light. Lin Sun's figure was annihilated, but it didn't mean death, because all these scenes were transformed by the shadow of death, and Lin Sun's death only represented the collapse of a wisp of consciousness in his mind. In short, this was a fight between the shadow of death and Lin Sun's consciousness, and the illusionary scenes were the specific presentation of this fight. When this wisp of consciousness collapsed, Lin Sun seemed extremely calm and terrible, as if he had no emotional fluctuations. Once again, he separated a wisp of consciousness and fought with the shadow of death. Now, the opportunity had been seized by him. Even if he failed again and again, he could kill again and again until the shadow of death was wiped out by his powerful spiritual power. This fighting method was extremely unique. The real Lin Sun was sitting cross-legged on the ground, running meditating magic and visualizing star circulation to keep his consciousness absolutely calm and focused without any emotional fluctuations. All this made Lin Sun fight with the shadow of death with his consciousness, just like fighting with the remaining demons in his heart with the combat experience and control of RFS. It seemed illusory, but in fact, the danger of such a battle was no less than that of a real fight, or even more terrible. After all, there were too many shadows of death. Now he finally seized the opportunity to separate one of them. Once he aroused the vigilance of other shadows of death and killed them together. The consequences were doomed to be disastrous. But Lin Sun had no way out. He had to stake everything on one throw. Kill. The familiar scene was reflected again. The strong man of Snake Spirit Clan killed him in the same way as before. And Lin Sun also fought against it. In the following time, Lin Sun kept failing, and his consciousness kept breaking. It seemed that he had no chance of winning at all. But every time he fought, he gained a deeper understanding of RFS. With the accumulation, the power of his counterattack also increased. Fighting was the most effective way to practice martial arts, which also applied to Lin Sun at the moment. As Lin Sun had speculated before, the opponent's control of RFS and the power it exerted might bring him the most direct fatal blow every time. But at the same time, he could also fully experience the true mystery and power of RFS. Failure, failure, failure. Lin Sun didn't know how many times he had comprehended the mystery of RFS more and more. Soon, Lin Sun's consciousness suddenly stopped. Time seemed to stand still. Countless insights merged together like tides, making Lin Sun subconsciously slash with his saber. This saber strike was like the horn of an antelope, and it was traceless. Boom! On the other side, the powerhouse of the Snake Spirit clan didn't even have time to attack before he was crushed by the saber. Success. This also meant that Lin Sun was already better than the powerhouse of the Snake Spirit clan in terms of control and comprehension of RFS. But Lin Sun was calm, as usual. Without any hesitation, his consciousness began to shroud the second shadow of death. The courtyard was silent, and the night was getting darker. Pieces of dreamy silver starlight shrouded the courtyard, and the mist was steaming, holy and ethereal. On the ground, the flowers and plants were full of vitality, swaying gently with the ethereal and desolate flute music. Shu Jin and Granny Wind suddenly narrowed their eyes. They were keenly aware that the originally violent and fierce murderous aura of Lin Sun, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, was obviously reduced by 30%. This refreshed both of them. Obviously, Lu Qingyin's method was feasible. However, when they looked at Lu Qingyin, their hearts tightened again. At this time, although Lu Qingyin's expression was still tranquil, there was a deep trace of exhaustion between her eyebrows. Her pure and beautiful face was faintly pale. This made them worried. Obviously, the ancient music she was playing at this time had caused great consumption and burden on her body, but it was obviously impossible to stop Lu Qingyin at this time. Shu Jin and Granny Wind could only hope that Lin Sun could cut off the devil in his heart as soon as possible. The battle that took place in the consciousness was completely different from that in reality. The confrontation between the consciousness and the shadow of death seemed to be long, but in fact, it was completed in a flash. As the saying goes, the world changed with a single thought. With the experience of killing the first shadow of death, coupled with the transformation of his comprehension of RFS, Lin Sun failed less and faster in the following battles, and the speed of his victory became faster and faster. Every secret realm powerhouse reflected in the shadow of death came from a different, mysterious race. Although the mystery of RFS they mastered was the same, the style and momentum were completely different. It was like there were no two identical leaves in the world. The same RFS was used, but because of the different understanding of its mystery, the power and style produced were naturally different. Therefore, fighting with these secret realm powerhouses was like fighting with a variety of completely different styles of RFS, so that Lin Sun could directly learn from each other's strong points and make up for his shortcomings, so that his mastery of RFS could be improved. Kill. Lin Sun's fighting speed was getting faster and faster, and his control of RFS was getting more and more skillful. He was able to display the essence of RFS with great precision. Even after the polishing of different styles of RFS, Lin Sun's RFS had a kind of magnificent atmosphere of drawing on the strengths of various styles and mastering them. Kill. In his mind, the shadow of death was constantly erased, and the emotions of fear, death, and unwillingness contained in it were no longer there. Kill. In the end, Lin Sun was sure that there was no possibility for Chun to threaten him in this life-or-death crisis. It has become less. Obviously, the speed of killing the devil in my heart is faster now. In the courtyard, Shu Jin and Granny Wind's eyes were getting brighter and brighter, and the original worries in their hearts were gradually reduced. An inner demon that was deeply rooted in one's heart was able to turn danger into safety. Such a thing that could be said to be one of the most dangerous things in the world was being displayed right before their eyes, and this caused these two great cultivators that possessed monstrous might to be unable to help but sigh endlessly with emotion. They even judged that after this incident, Lin Sun's cultivation would undergo an amazing transformation, and his future path was destined to be broader and immeasurable. Suddenly, Lu Qingyin, who was sitting beside the stone chair, frowned and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Her beautiful face was pale, and her sparkling eyes were dim. The ethereal and desolate flute music stopped abruptly. Granny Wind exclaimed and rushed over, holding Lu Qingyin's fragile body in her arms. Her face was full of worry. "Miss, are you okay?" Shu Jin's heart also sank, and he had no time to pay attention to Lin's son. Lu Qingyin's appearance was very likely because she couldn't bear the consumption and hurt herself. This was an extremely serious thing for cultivation, and it might even leave irreparable sequelae. "I'm fine." Lu Qingyin took a deep breath and wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Then she looked at Lin's son in the distance and asked worriedly, "Child Lin hasn't woken up yet?" Granny Wind was so angry that she said, "Miss, at this time, you still care about that boy. It's really—" She was so angry that she couldn't speak. Lu Qingyin quickly apologized. "Granny, I'm really sorry to make you worry. I'm really fine, but I'm afraid I can't use my cultivation in a short time." Granny Wind was still unwilling to give up. She used her power to check Lu Qingyin's whole body. Although her face was gloomy, she was obviously relieved. The injury was indeed not serious, but it was extremely troublesome to completely recover. "Humph, if anything happens to you today, this boy will also pay for it." Granny Wind snorted coldly. As soon as he heard her tone, Shu Ji knew that Lu Qingyin's problem should be solved, and it was not an irreparable injury. This made him feel much more relaxed. He said, "Yes, this boy is such a bastard. It's his own business, but he harmed others. It's really hateful. When he wakes up, I'll teach him a lesson first." With that, Shu Jin suddenly turned his head and sneered. "Boy, you're already awake. How long are you going to pretend?" Lin's son, who had been sitting cross-legged on the ground, opened his eyes with embarrassment. He had indeed woken up. Immediately, he rose to his feet and avoided Granny Wind's murderous gaze. He stepped forward and said to Lu Qingyin, "Thank you for your help this time. I will definitely repay this life-saving grace in the future." His voice was serious and sincere. Because he had heard the conversation just now, he finally knew that it was Lu Qingyin's help that helped him successfully erase the shadow of death this time. He was extremely grateful. "Child, you're too polite. As long as you wake up, it's fine. Last time, because of you and Huang Jinshan, I was still very uneasy. This time, it's an eye for an eye." Lu Qingyin said softly. Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but stare at Lu Qingyin. He never expected that this girl, who was famous throughout the empire, would care about such a trifle. "Child, what's wrong?" Lu Qingyin was a little embarrassed by his gaze. Her pale face was a little hot. It was the first time that she had been stared at so closely. "Nothing. I'm just thinking about how to repay you." Lin Sun took back his gaze, took a deep breath, and said seriously. He was indeed serious. He had never been as serious as he was now. "You want to repay me? It's very simple. Hurry up and repair the ancient rhythm ocarina." Granny Wind, next to him, said coldly. Hearing this, Lin Sun said without thinking, "This is not a problem for me. Within 3 days, I promise to repair it as before." After that, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. When he looked at Granny Wind and Lu Qingyin again, both of them were staring at him in amazement. Shu Jin also had a strange look on his face. Lin Sun quickly explained, "Don't get me wrong. It's my master, Master Sun, not me. But I can guarantee that it will be repaired in 3 days. That's for sure." Chapter 267. You can repair the ancient rhythm ocarina. After hesitating for a long time, Lu Qingyin asked with a hint of surprise. Looking at the pure and beautiful face of the girl, Lin Sun thought of what she had done for him before and suddenly felt sorry for her. Finally, he nodded. If he continued to hide it, his conscience would be condemned. Granny Wind snorted coldly. How dare this bastard deceive them? Then what about Master Sun? Lu Qingyin couldn't help asking again. Lin Sun was a little embarrassed and said, "Actually, I am Master Sun." Both Lu Qingyin and Granny Wind were stunned. Master Sun was Lin Sun? They were really shocked by this answer. They never thought that Lin Sun not only knew how to repair the ancient rhythm ocarina, but also was the so-called Master Sun himself. This was incredible. Who was Master Sun? He could refine spirit treasures and was well known in Mist City. But Lin Sun was just a teenager of 14 or 15 years old, which made it difficult for people to connect the two together. After all, who would dare to imagine that the famous Master Sun was actually just a teenager? That's impossible. Granny Wind frowned. How can you, a little guy, refine such a peerless thing as a spirit treasure? Lu Qingyan also found it hard to accept. In her impression, the powerful spiritual tattooists were all old guys. But how old was Lin Sun? How could he have such superb attainments in spiritual tattoos at such a young age? Lin Sun was stunned. He had already admitted it, but they didn't believe it. For a moment, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Granny Wind looked at Shu Jin. Really? Shu Jin smiled. It should be true. With his confirmation, Granny Wind and Lu Qingyan were finally sure that Lin Sun didn't seem to be lying. But when they thought that he was Master Sun, they were still a little confused. They didn't see it. They really didn't see it. But why did you hide it before? Granny Wind stared at Lin Sun as if she was looking at a monster. I was afraid of being famous. Lin Sun said helplessly. After all, I'm too young. If others know it, it will definitely cause a lot of trouble. Granny Wind pondered for a moment and then understood. Indeed, even she was shocked and couldn't believe it. One could imagine what a sensation it would cause if others knew about it. As far as Granny Wind knew, once the identity of a young spiritual tattooist with extraordinary means like Lin Sun was exposed, he would definitely attract the attention of the major forces in the empire. At that time, no one knew how many storms and turbulences would be caused, which would only do harm to Lin Sun. Despite her understanding, Granny Wind still couldn't get rid of the shock in her heart in a short time when she was sure that Lin Sun could refine such a blessed treasure as the spiritual treasure at the age of 10. So young master is already so powerful. Lu Qingyan's eyes were bright, and she looked at Lin Sun with curiosity. Originally, she only regarded Lin Sun as a great cultivation genius. Who would have thought that Lin Sun had another more dazzling identity, which really surprised her? The most incredible thing was that she had never thought that Lin Sun could repair the ancient rhythm ocarina at such a young age. In the whole empire, even those spiritual tattoo masters who lived in seclusion couldn't do it. Well, since we have known each other, this is the end of the matter. Next, I will urge this boy to help you repair the ancient rhythm ocarina. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Seeing the strange atmosphere, Shu Jin said immediately, yes, it can be done in 3 days. Lin Sun also nodded. In addition, please keep it a secret for me. After all, this matter is too big. If it is spread out, Lu Qingyan blinked and said with a smile, well, I understand. Young master, don't worry. I know best how troublesome it is to be famous. Lin Sun said with a smile, I know Miss Yin is the most considerate. Humph. Granny Wind couldn't stand it anymore. She glanced at Lin Sun coldly and said to Lu Qingyan, Miss, your injury must be treated immediately. Now that the matter has been solved, let's go back. Then she left with Lu Qingyan without allowing Lin Sun to refuse. Young master, please take care of the ancient rhythm ocarina. I will come and pick it up in 3 days. Lu Qingyan showed a helpless look to Lin Sun and was taken away by Granny Wind. Don't worry, I'll make you satisfied. Lin Sun waved his hand until Granny Wind and Lu Qingyan disappeared. Shu Jin said in surprise, I didn't expect that you would start to hook up with a girl as soon as you got rid of your inner demon. You're crazy. Lin Sun said angrily, why does everything sound so different when it comes to your mouth? Old Jin, it seems that you don't understand women at all. Shu Jin sneered, I really don't understand women, but I know you. If you hook up with that girl, that crazy woman will castrate you immediately. After saying that, he turned around and walked to the corner, hugging the wine jar and falling asleep. Lin Sun smiled and looked up at the sky. There was a sense of relief on his face, as if he had just survived a disaster. Dawn was about to break. In the end, he had managed to survive this night of danger. 3 days later, Lin Sun repaired the ancient rhythm ocarina, but it was not Lu Qingyan who came to pick it up, but Granny Wind. Before leaving, Granny Wind suddenly asked Lin Sun indifferently. Do you remember what I said to you after you met Yin for the first time? Lin Sun smiled. Of course I remember. How could he forget? At that time, Granny Wind had made it clear that Lin Sun was not qualified to match Lu Qingyin's current status. She told Lin Sun not to have other thoughts so as not to make mistakes. Speaking of which, Lin Sun really didn't try to pursue Lu Qingyin until now. Everything was caused by Granny Wind's excessive concern for Lu Qingyin. In Lin Sun's view, Lu Qingyin was a very good girl. She was not only beautiful, smart, and kind-hearted. She was a friend that he appreciated very much and was willing to make friends with. Lin Sun was not sure whether he would like Lu Qingyin in the future, but at least for now, he was sure that he had no desire to pursue her. I hope you keep it in mind. Before leaving, I don't mind telling you that Yin, like you, is not only an artistic practitioner. She is very special, and not everyone can miss her. Granny Wind took a deep look at Lin Sun, dropped these words, and floated away. Lin Sun was in a daze for a long time. He felt helpless and muttered in his heart, I'm not even 15 years old. Is it necessary to be so vigilant against me? At the same time, a sense of loss suddenly surged in his heart. According to Granny Wind, she would leave with Lu Qingyin today. He didn't know when they would meet again or whether they would have a chance to meet again in the future. Thinking of this, Lin Sun regretted that he had promised Chu Feng to go to the celebration of Keystone business together. If he could listen to the wonderful sound of Lu Qingyin with his own eyes, it would be a good memory worth recalling in the future. Flying light, I advise you to drink a cup of wine. I don't know the height of the blue sky, nor the depth of the yellow earth. Only when the moon is cold and the sun is warm, I will fry my life. In the courtyard, Shu Jin slapped his thighs and made a pleasant sound while drinking. What he recited in his rough and low voice was the Song of Flying Light, which had already shocked Mist City and spread in all directions. After hearing it, Lin Sun couldn't help but praise, good poem. Shu Jin said casually, it's Lu Qingyin who sang it. Lin Sun was stunned and regretted that he didn't attend the celebration of Keystone business in person that day. Another 4 days passed. Lin Sun entered the secret realm of 100 battles, the third test of Green Cloud Path for the second time. This was the second chance to pass the test, which was very precious. But compared with the first time, Lin Sun was no longer afraid. In the previous test, he had a total of 47 duels with 47 strong people from different races, and then withdrew because of the deep inner demons. But because of this withdrawal, Lin Sun had the opportunity to face the inner demons and erase the 47 shadows of death left in his mind one by one. As a result, Lin Sun's mastery of RFS had improved by leaps and bounds, and he had reached the level of precision in the realm of martial arts. He drew on the strengths of Bai family and mastered it through a comprehensive study. He was only one step away from reaching the level of mastery. At the same time, his state of mind had been reborn after this test. Even if he was invaded by the inner demons again, he would not be as passive and powerless as the first time. This was undoubtedly the most important transformation. Before long, the test began. The familiar strong man of Snake Clan was the first to appear. Without hesitation, Lin Sun jumped up. The following battles could be described as unstoppable. One battle after another began and ended with Lin Sun's victory again and again. Until the 48th battle, Lin Sun encountered a completely strange, strong man of the secret realm, and the style of RFS was completely strange to him. But the result was Lin Sun still won. It was not that the opponent was not strong, but that Lin Sun had already mastered the mystery of RFS of the previous 47 strong people. The power of RFS displayed by him was naturally very great. As time went by, the battle played out one after another. Lin Sun, like an invincible general, killed his opponents again and again. He was invincible and unparalleled. However, as the battle went on, the strong men of the secret realm appeared more and more, and the power of RFS displayed by them became more and more terrible, causing more and more pressure on Lin Sun. Until the 90th battle, Lin Sun encountered an extremely strong opponent and finally ended in a lose-lose situation. When it came to the 91st battle, Lin Sun tried his best, but he was finally defeated and killed on the spot. Once again, he experienced the fear of death. But all this did not pose much threat to Lin Sun. His state of mind was no longer as fragile as it was when he first entered the secret realm of 100 battles. The most important thing was that even if he failed, the battle would continue. As long as he persisted in completing 100 battles, he could pass the test smoothly. However, when it came to the 100th battle, Lin Sun chose to give up again. It was not the invasion of the inner demons that made him unable to bear it again, but because he also remembered that if he passed the test in this way, he could only pass the test and could not get the reward. If he wanted to get the reward, he must do one thing: win 100 battles. Chapter 268. What? When Lin Sun just returned from the heaven accessing place, Shu Jin, who was drinking in the courtyard, suddenly felt a chill in his heart, and his expression changed slightly. The familiar killing intent gushed out from Lin Sun's room again. Was this boy possessed by the heart devil again? Shu Jin rushed into the room without thinking too much. When he saw Lin Sun sitting cross-legged and meditating, his face suddenly became interesting. Sure enough, Lin Sun was suffering from the heart devil again. The violent killing intent surged from Lin Sun's body. His expression was sometimes ferocious and sometimes crazy, almost exactly the same as the last time he encountered the heart devil. Damn it! What the hell is this boy doing? Wasn't the last lesson enough? Shu Jin was so angry that he almost swore. Lu Qingyan and Granny Wind had already left, and no one could save Lin Sun this time. What to do? Shu Jin really wanted to twist Lin Sun's head and see what he was thinking. The same thing happened twice. Did he really want to die? Old Jin, I'm fine. You go out first. This time I can kill the heart devil alone. Suddenly, Lin Sun spoke in a calm voice. Shu Jin was stunned and couldn't believe it. He looked at Lin Sun carefully for a long time and found that the violent killing intent of Lin Sun was indeed gradually weakening. He immediately breathed a sigh of relief and turned out of the room. Back to the courtyard, Shu Jin looked a little strange. He really couldn't figure out what secret method Lin Sun was practicing. In just a few days, Lin Sun had attracted the heart devil twice, which was too abnormal. What puzzled Shu Jin most was that in the face of the second heart devil, Lin Sun showed an unprecedented confidence, as if the heart devil was nothing. This time, Shu Jin couldn't help but wonder whether the cultivation method Lin Sun practiced needed to be tempered by the heart devil. He couldn't figure it out. Shu Jin increasingly felt that Lin Sun was more than a pervert. He was simply a monster who didn't play by common sense. If such a person grew up, God knew what he would become. Shu Jin didn't know that when he was in the bloodthirsty camp, the chief drill master Shu Sanqi in Yangkou also had such feelings. One day later, Lin Sun woke up from meditation with all his inner demons removed. In fact, although Lin Sun had a lot of inner demons this time, they could no longer shake his state of mind. Under such circumstances, the shadows of death were like experiences. When Lin Sun got rid of them one by one, he also understood more about RFS. This was a crisis. Danger and luck went hand in hand. When danger was no longer a threat, what was left was luck. In Shu Jin's opinion, for Lin Sun, experiencing the tempering of fighting against the heart devil twice was no less than getting a rare chance. It allowed Lin Sun to experience the mystery and power of the heart devil in the human gang realm, which was destined to be of immeasurable benefit to his future cultivation. This could be seen from the transformation of Lin Sun's state of mind. Even the inner demons couldn't shake him, which showed how tough and powerful Lin Sun's state of mind had become. Another 7 days passed. Lin entered the secret realm of 100 battles for the third time. Lin Sun, who had long been familiar with this, launched one battle after another without any hesitation. All the way, Lin Sun was unstoppable and unbeatable. Until the 99th battle, Lin Sun had never failed again. No failure naturally meant that he wouldn't be possessed by the heart devil. Similarly, it meant that Lin Sun's control of RFS had reached an unprecedented, terrifying height. The 100th battle, against the strong man of a human clan, a familiar, cold, and hollow voice sounded. announcing that the last battle was about to begin. This made Lin Sun couldn't help narrowing his eyes. Human clan. Swish. A statue shattered, and a slender figure rushed out. This was a man with an imposing appearance and stood out from the crowd. His entire body was filled with an ancient aura. He wore a cyan feather robe that only existed in ancient legends. He walked barefoot, with long hair draped over his shoulders and an ancient-looking long, curved saber in his hand. His bearing, dressing, and the aura he revealed with every single move he made was like an ancient cultivator that had walked out from the primeval times, and he seemed to be extremely unique. To Lin Sun's surprise, just as he was about to take action, the ancient practitioner suddenly said, "My fellow practitioner, wait a minute. Listen to me." This was the first time that Lin Sun met someone who talked to him since he got the heaven accessing place. This surprised him. Although he didn't take action, he was still vigilant in his heart. "Say it," Lin Sun said, looking at him up and down. "My Dharma name is Wei Mingzi, and I was once the 15th-generation successor of the Tai, immortal sect. Because I mistakenly entered this place, I suddenly encountered a calamity and ended up dying. Only a strand of my remnant soul was sealed here, and I will never be able to escape. I'm truly delighted to be able to meet fellow Taoist by chance this time. I wonder if fellow Taoist can lend me a hand to completely free myself from this place and no longer suffer such torture." Wei Mingzi's voice was sad, full of desolation, pain, and helplessness, which was moving. Lin Sun didn't comment, but he was quite surprised in his heart. Tai immortal sect? What kind of force was this? Judging from Wei Mingzi's dress and speech, he must be an ancient practitioner from a long time ago. The so-called Tai immortal sect must also be a force from a long time ago. Lin Sun's reaction made Wei Mingzi slightly stunned. Then he took a deep breath and said, "My fellow practitioner, if you help me get out of trouble this time, I will give you a supreme opportunity." Lin Sun asked with interest, "What opportunity?" Seeing that Lin Sun was obviously persuaded, Wei Mingzi was excited and said, "After you help me, you will naturally understand. I can swear by my Taoist heart that if I lie, I will be killed by the great Tao and never die a good death." Lin Sun couldn't help but be speechless. You can neither live nor die now. This kind of oath is useless. Wei Mingzi said with a bitter smile, "My fellow practitioner, what I said is true. I dare not deceive you." Lin Sun thought and said, "I can promise you, but you have to wait until I get through this level." Wei Mingzi was originally happy, but when he heard the second half of Lin Sun's words, his face suddenly changed, and he cried out involuntarily, "Never!" Lin Sun was keenly aware that Wei Mingzi's mood seemed to be a little too excited. He couldn't help asking in surprise why. Wei Mingzi's face showed a touch of monstrous hatred. He gritted his teeth and said, "My fellow practitioner, you don't know that this place is a trap. Any practitioner who enters this place will be manipulated and influenced by the master of this place, turning into a puppet in his hands. If he wants you to die, you will die." Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and pondered. Wei Mingzi frowned and said, "My fellow practitioner, do you think I'm alarmist? To tell you the truth, all those years ago, I'd once tried to overcome this test as well. But later on, I noticed that it was a scam. Fortuitous encounters and rewards were all for the sake of using and controlling us. If you don't obey or resist, you'll end up like me." Lin Sun was puzzled. "My fellow practitioner, I have never encountered such a thing as you said since I broke through the level." Wei Mingzi looked distressed. "Fellow Taoist, why haven't you been enlightened? How can there be opportunities and benefits that can be obtained so easily in this world? When you think you can get more, you have already fallen into the trap. Otherwise, how could I be trapped here?" Lin Sun was silent for a moment and said, "I don't agree with you. Before entering this place, I was almost a waste who couldn't cultivate. It was because of entering this place that I changed my fate and set foot on the road of cultivation again." After a pause, he suddenly laughed. "As for whether I will be used and manipulated, I don't worry about it at all. What's the use of a human gang realm practitioner like me? What's more, even if I am used, so what? At least it proves that I still have some value to be used. Even if I have to pay some price for it, I am not unwilling. This was his real thought. If it weren't for the heaven-accessing place, how could Lin Sun be today? You. Wei Mingzi was speechless for a while, and his expression changed dramatically. Suddenly, he seemed to have noticed something, and he said anxiously, "Fellow Taoist, there isn't much time left. I beg you, help me this time. Once I escape, I'll definitely fulfill my promise and give you a supreme, fortuitous encounter." Speaking of this, Lin Sun had roughly understood something and sighed. "My fellow practitioner, this supreme opportunity can't help you. Now you come to ask me for help. Do you think I will believe you?" At the end of his words, Lin Sun's deep black eyes were filled with a touch of coldness. From the beginning, Lin Sun didn't believe Wei Mingzi at all. His appearance was too sudden and strange. Even his words had many flaws, which made Lin Sun unable to believe him at all. What was more, this was the last battle in the secret realm of 100 battles. Even if what Wei Mingzi said was true, Lin Sun would still choose to break through the secret realm instead of listening to Wei Mingzi and stopping to help him. "My fellow practitioner," when Wei Mingzi said this, his face became distorted and ferocious. His whole body surged with endless tyrannical and dense killing intent. His whole person seemed to have become a bloodthirsty demon king, and there was no trace of his previous demeanor. He roared angrily, "Fellow Taoist, you're the one who forced me to do this. Originally, if you agreed to help me, you might have been able to keep your life. But now, not only am I going to kill you, I'm going to forcefully occupy your body and extract all of your consciousness so that I could be reborn and completely leave this damned place." At the end of his words, his voice was like a roar, extremely frightening. Boom! With his long hair flying, he attacked boldly. The long saber in his hand swept like a galaxy. It was RFS. If you knew it would be like this, you're still too anxious. If you can delay it a little longer, maybe I will really hesitate to help you. What a pity. Lin Sun sneered. Almost at the same time, the saber in his hand made a clear sound. Without hesitation, he struck at Wei Mingzi's head. What help? It was obvious that Wei Mingzi wanted to trap him in the name of help, so as to achieve the purpose of occupying his body and being reborn. Chapter 269. Originally, Lin Sun thought that since Wei Mingzi had wisdom, the secret fighting method he mastered must be extraordinary. But he never thought that Wei Mingzi was still using RFS. This made Lin Sun suddenly understand that no matter what Wei Mingzi's origin was, in this secret realm of 100 battles, Wei Mingzi was the strongest in the 100th battle. Naturally, he must fight according to the rules of the heaven-accessing place. In just a moment, under Lin Sun's extremely strong attack, Wei Mingzi was killed. Before he died, he shouted like a madman, "I don't accept it. I don't accept it." In the end, he turned into a rain of light and disappeared completely from the arena. Seeing this, Lin Sun didn't feel anything. Maybe Wei Mingzi was just a remnant soul-sealed here, as he said, but since he schemed against Lin Sun and wanted to occupy Lin Sun's body to get out of trouble, he deserved to die. What's more, death was another kind of relief for Wei Mingzi, who had been suppressed here for many years. As for the supreme opportunity, Wei Mingzi said, Lin Sun didn't want to believe it. Suddenly, Lin Sun noticed that there was an unusual light in the place where Wei Mingzi was killed. Lin Sun walked forward and saw that the light was a snow-white feather about the size of a baby's palm. It seemed to be made of wisps of spiritual light, pure and ethereal, exuding a mysterious aura. Lin Sun held it in his hand. Suddenly, the light flashed and disappeared in his palm. In Lin Sun's mind, there was the same snow-white feather. This made Lin Sun feel awestruck and alert. But after careful observation for a long time, he couldn't find anything. Lin Sun couldn't help wondering what this thing was. This thing was obviously left by Wei Mingzi. The fact that it could appear in Lin Sun's sea of consciousness proved that this thing was extremely unusual. But Lin Sun didn't feel happy at all. On the contrary, because he knew it was left by Wei Mingzi, he was extremely vigilant. The only thing that made him feel at ease for the time being was that this feather with a holy, and ethereal taste had not changed. Buzz, with the end of the 100th battle, the arena, which seemed to be opened in the void, was covered with countless light rain, bright and blazing, like a miracle. Almost at the same time, that cold and emotionless voice rang out. You've successfully passed the trial. You've won 100 battles and will be rewarded. Lin Sun's heart shook and his eyes brightened. Finally, after that, he saw the countless droplets of light that arose on the arena start to fuse together, and they gradually formed 3 extremely dazzling balls of light that floated in midair and were extremely dazzling. Taoist Seeker, you have the chance to choose one of the treasures as your reward for clearing this trial. If you don't make your choice after 15 minutes, it will be regarded as you forfeiting this reward. Lin Sun was surprised that there was a time limit. He didn't dare to hesitate any longer. He walked forward and sized up the 3 bright orbs of light. He could only choose one of them as the reward, so he naturally had to be very careful when choosing. In the first light orb, there was an elixir, which was purple like a precious pearl and covered with blurry, auspicious clouds. There was a hole on it, from which black and white chi gushed out, which evolved into the wonderful image of dragon roar, tiger roar, heaven and earth in harmony, which looked extremely magical. At the first sight of it, the introduction of this elixir emerged in Lin Sun's mind. Yin and Yang inside elixir, after being swallowed by practitioners below sea spirit realm, could help them open their mind, break the barrier of cultivation, and improve their cultivation by 1 level. Lin Sun was shocked, and his eyes suddenly became extremely bright. It could open one's mind, break the barrier, and improve one's cultivation by 1 level. How could there be such an elixir in the world? As far as Lin Sun knew, no alchemist in the whole empire had the ability to refine such an unparalleled elixir. Lin Sun was immediately tempted. Even if he didn't swallow it, he could sell it at a sky-high price that could drive the world crazy. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun forcibly moved his eyes away and looked at the second light orb. Although Yin and Yang inside elixir was extremely mysterious, it was of little practical use for him. With his current realm, he could break through to the Earthgang realm at any time. There was no chance to use this elixir in a short time. In the second light orb, there was a treasure armor, which was silver all over and painted with various strange patterns, including cloud patterns, mountains and rivers, and auspicious beasts. It was filled with a soft silver luster, which looked magical and extraordinary. Silver Star Armor. All cultivators under the Spirit C tier could wear it. It could help cultivators cultivate, nurture the soul, refine the flesh and blood, and when in battle, it had the most powerful defensive power. It could withstand a full blow from a Spirit C tier elite. Hiss! Lin Sun couldn't help but take a breath of cool air. It was a good treasure. If he wore it, he would not only benefit his cultivation, but also not be afraid of the blow from a sea spirit realm practitioner. The most important thing was that cultivators below the Spirit Sea realm could wear it. Didn't it mean that even ordinary people could enjoy the magical effect of this treasure? Lin Sun believed that if this treasure came to the market, it would definitely cause a sensation in the world and make countless practitioners fight for it. Lin Sun was tempted again. He didn't expect that the reward for passing the 3rd test of Green Cloud Path would be so magical. Looking at the Yin and Yang enlightening elixir and the Silver Light Star armor in front of him, which one was not a rare treasure? It couldn't even be bought in the Empire. After taking a few deep breaths, Lin Sun looked at the last light orb again, and his eyes couldn't help brightening. Yet a damaged piece of copper floated up into appearance within his ball of light. It was extremely simple, yet it emanated an extremely terrifying oppressive force, and it seemed as if it wasn't a piece of copper, but a divine mountain that could suppress the ages and be unshakable by anyone. It was one of the 9 treasures of the wilderness, the fragment of ancient seal of shaking heaven. It contained the magic of 9 strikes for shaking heaven, and its power was immeasurable. Lin Sun was completely shocked. Almost in an instant, his mind had been firmly attracted by this fragment of ancient seal of shaking heaven and could no longer move. That was it. If the yin and yang inside elixir and the silver star armor made Lin Sun extremely tempted, then at this moment, when he saw this fragment of ancient seal of shaking heaven, he almost instinctively longed for it. Lin Sun knew in an instant that this was what he wanted. Shu Jin once pointed out that although Lin Sun's fighting capacity was extraordinary among his peers, the fighting means he mastered were too simple. Lin Sun had also thought about this problem, and even made a decision that he must find an opportunity to find a suitable martial art for himself. And now, the opportunity was in front of him. 9 strikes for shaking heaven, just from the name, was a unique secret method to fight without the help of weapons. The most incredible thing was that such a secret technique was actually imprinted in the fragment of the ancient heaven-shaking seal, which made this secret technique even more extraordinary. Lin Sun would not forget that the introduction said that ancient seal of shaking heaven was one of the 9 treasures of the wilderness. Although he didn't know what the so-called 9 treasures of the wilderness represented, there was no doubt that the things mentioned by the heaven-accessing place were destined to be extraordinary. If he had this fragment of ancient seal of shaking heaven, there was no doubt that he had the opportunity to see such treasures with his own eyes. He could even find some clues from this fragment to explore the real ancient seal of shaking heaven. Clatter, when Lin Sun made a choice, he only felt dizzy, and the scene in front of him disappeared like illusions. Practitioner, the 4th pass of the heaven-accessing place is called Conquering the Domain. The next time you try it, you need to reach Sea Spirit Realm. The cold voice sounded, and Lin Sun had opened his eyes in the room. The next pass was called Conquering the Domain. What did it mean? When Lin Sun was thinking, he suddenly found a piece of rusty iron beside him. The iron seemed to be split with an irregular shape, dark gray, simple and unadorned. But when Lin Sun tried to hold it in his hand, he couldn't pick it up. Lin Sun was surprised. He ran his strength to barely hold it in his hand. It weighed at least 10,000 kilograms. It was only the size of a coin, but it was so heavy, which made it more mysterious in Lin Sun's eyes. There was no doubt that this was the fragment of ancient seal of shaking heaven. Thinking of the introduction of this treasure, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel excited. He wanted to divide his consciousness to carefully investigate the secret imprint hidden in it. But at this moment, he suddenly felt a pain in his sea of consciousness, as if he had been severely scratched by a saw. He couldn't help but let out a muffled groan. Lin Sun was shocked. He found that the holy and ethereal feather in his sea of consciousness had changed at this moment. It was shining and filled with terrifying power. "Ha! My fellow practitioner, thank you for your help this time. In order to express my gratitude, I have decided to give you a supreme opportunity." Laughter came from the white feather, full of pride and happiness. It was the voice of Wei Mingzi. In an instant, Lin Sun's face changed. This guy was not dead. Boom! His sea of consciousness was tumbling, and Wei Mingzi's figure suddenly appeared from the white feather. He was looming, looking up and laughing. What opportunity! Lin Sun tried to calm himself down. "Well, didn't I tell you? It's your body that will help me return to the top of the Tao. Think about it. With my wisdom and soul, and your flesh and blood body, the world is destined to belong to us in the future." Wei Mingzi's voice was wild and full of endless aggressiveness. He made a despicable plan of rebirth in a shell sound dignified. This guy really had no good intentions. "Ha ha ha, come on, lend me your body. In the future, I will be you and you will be me. I will help you realize your unfulfilled wishes one by one. Who in the world can give you such a supreme opportunity?" In the laughter, Wei Mingzi's body suddenly emerged with thousands of golden brilliance, sweeping through Lin Sun's sea of consciousness. Obviously, he intended to obliterate Lin Sun's soul. Chapter 270. As he spoke, Lin Sun had already run meditating magic to visualize the wonderful image of star circulation to guard his soul. Buzz! In the sea of consciousness, the scene of the vast universe and the circulation of tens of thousands of stars suddenly appeared. The stars shone brightly, releasing clear and bright starlight. That was the power of the soul, which was fully operated by Lin Sun with meditating magic. Suddenly, Wei Mingzi, who was laughing proudly, froze. His pupils dilated and his face was full of horror and disbelief. It was as if he had seen a living ghost. He trembled all over and roared furiously. Meditating magic. Damn it. How could you crack the flowing light spiritual tattoo? That thing is the power that can only be controlled by a divine tattoo walker. How could it be controlled by a human gang realm bastard like you? It's impossible. His voice was hysterical and full of fear. Wei Mingzi's looming illusory figure was frantically dodging in Lin Sun, as if he wanted to avoid the bright starlight. But the sea of consciousness belonged to Lin Sun. Here he was like the master. As soon as he thought of it, the starlight poured down like a waterfall, covering Wei Mingzi's figure, making it impossible for him to escape. Wei Mingzi screamed in pain and trembled all over. His face was horrified and ferocious to the extreme. He was no longer arrogant and insufferably arrogant. Indeed, he had never expected that after being trapped in the heaven-accessing place for so many years, he would encounter a disaster all of a sudden when he finally found a chance to get out. Even in the era he lived in, the meditating magic was the most terrible martial art in the world. If it was in the past, Wei Mingzi would not be afraid. After all, it was just a secret method to cultivate the soul. What was worse was that he only had a wisp of soul left now. What he feared most was the power of the soul. Damn it! Damn it! How could this be? The great Tao of heaven really can't tolerate me. Wei Mingzi? Boom! Starlight swept like a waterfall. Wei Mingzi was trapped in it, like a straw in the vast sea. His illusory figure was collapsing inch by inch. It was as if Wei Mingzi was a piece of ice being smelted in a sea of fire. No! No! Fellow Taoist, please show mercy. Wei Mingzi was completely terrified. He had been trapped for countless years, and it was not easy for him to escape, but he was going to die like this. He was too unwilling. Taoism peer, don't kill me first. Don't you want to know why I can survive in the heaven-accessing place until now? Fellow Taoist, I beg you to let me go. I guarantee that I'll teach you everything I know so that you can ascend to the peak of the great Tao and rule the world. Fellow Taoist, why aren't you saying anything? Isn't that enough? As long as you let me go, I'm willing to be your slave and go through fire and water for you, even if I have to die 10,000 times. Fellow Taoist, no matter how Wei Mingzi begged and screamed, Lin Sun turned a deaf ear and was indifferent. He never stopped running meditating magic. Wei Mingzi was too cunning and dangerous. Lin would not be careless again. Boom! In the end, Wei Mingzi's figure was completely crushed and disappeared. His voice full of panic, unwillingness, pleading, and despair stopped abruptly. Lin Sun was still worried. While running meditating magic, he checked repeatedly. Finally, he was sure that Wei Mingzi had been killed. Then he breathed a sigh of relief. His clothes were soaked with cold sweat, and he still had a lingering fear. The scene just now was too dangerous. If he hadn't run meditating magic in time, his body would have been occupied by Wei Mingzi at this moment, and his soul would have disappeared. He would have completely become a puppet of Wei Mingzi's reincarnation. Thinking of this, Lin Sun suddenly remembered that Wei Mingzi also seemed to recognize meditating magic and knew that it was hidden in the flowing light spiritual tattoo. Wait, Lin Sun soon noticed another detail. Wei Mingzi once said that the flowing light spiritual tattoo was the power that only the divine stripe walker could control. What was the matter with the divine stripe walker? At that time, when Wei Mingzi saw that Lin Sun could crack the flowing light spiritual tattoo, he seemed to be extremely shocked and unbelievable, which proved that the divine stripe walker was extraordinary. Lin Sun vaguely felt that the divine stripe walker was a title, which referred to those powerful figures who could control the magical spiritual tattoo like the flowing light spiritual tattoo. Soon, Lin Sun's attention was attracted by the scene in the sea of his consciousness. Although Wei Mingzi had been erased, the pure white and sacred feather was still there. It emitted glittering light and floated quietly in the sea of his consciousness, looking extremely mysterious. If Lin Sun's speculation was right, Wei Mingzi was hidden in this feather and was brought out from the heaven-accessing place by him. But when Lin Sun's consciousness probed this feather, it was blocked by an invisible force around the feather, which made his consciousness unable to approach it. Lin Sun's pupil shrank. He was unwilling to give up and tried all kinds of methods, but he still failed in the end, which made Lin Sun more and more surprised. Was this small, white feather a treasure of unknown origin? Lin Sun suddenly thought of Wei Mingzi. This guy had obviously been trapped in the heaven-accessing place for a long time, but he could still maintain a wisp of his soul and not be obliterated. Was it because of the help of this white feather? Lin Sun pondered for a long time, but he couldn't be sure. Finally, he gave up. Maybe one day, when his cultivation reached a certain terrifying height, he would be able to crack the real mystery of this white feather. In fact, in Lin Sun's sea of consciousness now, in addition to this mysterious feather, there was a towering gate to heaven and an Amrita St. Pearl. Needless to say, the gate to heaven represented the existence of the heaven-accessing place. The Amrita St. Pearl was the sacred treasure of Water Barbarian, one of the 9 branches of Voodoo Barbarian. It was unfathomable. In the assessment of the Demon Cloud Ridge Theater of Operations, it helped Lin Sun escape danger and successfully broke through the realm. However, at that time, the pearls seemed to be exhausted and fell into silence. It had been floating around the gate to heaven in the sea of consciousness. Until now, there was no way to take it out. Lin Sun had also tried to understand the mystery of this bead, but found that the bead was empty, like chaos and boundless. Even with Lin Sun's powerful spiritual power, he couldn't determine how big the bead was and what mysterious power was hidden in it. In the end, Lin Sun could only give up. At present, although this pearl was of no help to him, it was the supreme sacred treasure of Water Barbarian after all. There must be many wonders in it. If he had the opportunity to contact the strong Water Barbarian again in the future, he might be able to find some answers. Of course, before that, Lin Sun would never mention this to anyone. There was no other way. If the Water Barbarian knew it, they would send countless elites to kill him. Withdrawing from the sea of consciousness, Lin Sun's eyes fell on the fragment of the ancient heaven-shaking seal again, and his heart became hot again. This was the reward chosen by him after passing the 3rd test of Green Cloud Path. Its origin was mysterious, and it was closely related to the ancient heaven-shaking seal, one of the so-called 9 treasures of the Great Wilderness. The most important thing was that this fragment was imprinted with a secret skill, 9 strikes of shaking heaven. How could a secret skill that could appear in the heaven-accessing place and be passed down in such a unique way be simple? Without the slightest hesitation, Lin Sun divided a wisp of his consciousness into this fragment. In an instant, it seemed that he came to an ancient and primitive world. The sky was dark and the earth was yellow, and there were ancient and primitive mountains everywhere. The sky seemed to be boundless, with a big sun hanging above, illuminating the universe. Where is this? As soon as this thought flashed through Lin Sun's mind, he saw that under the sky, an incomparably majestic figure suddenly appeared, standing on the mountains and stepping on the top of the clouds. His body, which seemed to be made of bronze, was surging with terrible and tyrannical spirit. This majestic figure was overflowing with light, illuminating the mountains and rivers. He was just like a legendary god overlooking the world. Suddenly, he moved. He clenched his palms and fingers into a fist, jumped up, and punched the sky. Crack! This punch actually caused the sky to suddenly collapse like a mirror. Countless horrifying rifts split open on the sky, and they spread towards the surroundings like a spiderweb. The sky seemed to collapse, and the sun in the sky was shaking as if it was about to fall. Boom! The earth-shaking explosion resounded in all directions. Just the sound wave alone smashed the mountains, cracked the earth, and everything seemed to be unable to bear it and collapsed. It was like the heavens and the earth were like a canvas that was forcefully torn apart and crushed by this punch. Terrible. It was unimaginable horror. It was hard to imagine how terrible the power must be to shake the universe with one punch and make everything disappear. Lin Sun only felt a buzz in his mind, as if he was struck by lightning. All the scenes in front of him disappeared. Almost at the same time, countless mysteries of inheritance surged in his heart. 9 strikes of shaking heaven. They were divided into mountains splitting collapse, seas splitting collapse, void refining collapse, soul shattering collapse, python dragon collapse, great phoenix collapse, hell suppressing collapse, sky devourer collapse, and all spirits collapse. There were a total of 9 moves. Each move contained the ultimate power of destruction, which could split mountains and seas, suppress hell, and swallow the sky. It was infinitely mysterious and powerful. The most terrible thing was that when all the 9 moves were mastered to perfection, it was like mastering the profound meaning of the Great Way, and they could be superimposed perfectly. For example, 2 moves superimposed could become mountains splitting collapse, soul shattering collapse, python dragon collapse, great phoenix collapse, hell suppressing collapse, and so on. Moreover, this superposition started with 1 and ended with 9. They were integrated and evolved, and they could deduce infinite mysteries and deduce the power to the extreme with infinite power. Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked. This kind of cultivation method was more than powerful. It simply contained a kind of wonderful Tao and began to touch the profound meaning of Tao. Soon, Lin Sun calmed down. The secret of the 9 strikes for shaking heaven had been fully imprinted in his mind, but it was impossible to comprehend and control it in a day and night. Even this cultivation method was difficult and complicated, far beyond imagination. It would certainly not be easy to practice. Chapter 271. From that day on, Lin put the cultivation of 9 strikes for shaking heaven on the agenda. In addition to meditation, he pondered and practiced this martial art every day. It was a pity that although the courtyard where Lin lived was large, it was too narrow and fragile to withstand the devastation of gang spirit power. Therefore, Lin could only restrain his gang spirit and use the route of 9 strikes for shaking heaven as a guide. He only practiced the movements of this martial art and comprehended its mystery, but dared not easily display its power. Even so, when Shu Jin saw this martial art for the first time, he couldn't help narrowing his eyes and feeling excited. With his eyesight, he could naturally see that the secret martial art Lin practiced was extremely unique. Each movement seemed strange, but it contained the magic of movement, softness and hardness, yin and yang, and was full of indescribable grandeur. And this was just a move. It was hard to imagine what kind of amazing destructive power Lin would produce when he released all the power of this martial art with a unique route. What martial art is this? On this day, Shu Jin was unable to restrain the curiosity in his heart in the end, and he said, merely based on the aura revealed by the move, it can already be considered to be first-rate, and it's not inferior to the ancient secret techniques passed down in the clans. Kid, where did you obtain such a cultivation technique? Lin only mentioned the name of 9 strikes for shaking heaven, but didn't mention where he got it. He also wanted to test whether Shu Jin had heard of this martial art. Shu Jin was stunned when he heard this. He frowned and thought for a long time, and finally shook his head. I probably know some of the top secret martial arts in the Empire, such as Sword Sutra of Crossing Heaven practiced by Shai Yutong, Infinite Prajna art inherited from the royal family of the Empire, Fuyao Tao scripture of Green Deer School, and so on. Among the top ancient martial arts, or the second-class martial arts, there is no one called 9 strikes for shaking heaven. In the end, Shu Jin looked at Lin with a strange look. Could it be that the martial art you practice is a kind of unique martial art that has never been seen in the world? Not appearing in the world meant that it had not appeared in the world for a very, very long time. It was possible that it was an ultimate art that had been passed down in the ancient times a very, very long time ago. However, it had been lost in the river of time for many years, and no one had ever learned it. According to Shu Jin's knowledge, there had been examples like this before. For example, the Blood King Ning Bugue's thunder power of all 8 desolation was obtained by Ning Bugue when he was young. It was rumored that it was inherited from a mysterious Taoist orthodoxy that controlled the power of thunder. For example, in the treasury of the royal family of the empire, there were more than 10 ancient secret methods that were on par with the thunder power from all directions. I don't know either. Lin Sun shook his head. He really didn't know. He only knew that the 9 strikes for shaking heaven was imprinted in the fragment of the ancient seal. Apart from that, he knew nothing else. Oh, Shu Jin was deep in thought. As time went on, Lin Sun mastered all the 9 movements of 9 strikes for shaking heaven. However, the mystery contained in the movements was too difficult and huge. It was not possible to comprehend and master all of them in a short time. On this day, after breakfast, Lin Sun pushed open the door and walked out of the courtyard. These days, he had been practicing without going out or listening to the outside world. Now, walking on the bustling streets of Mist City again, he couldn't help being in a trance. Immediately, Lin Sun shook his head and quickened his pace. He didn't go out for a stroll today. Azure Ashram. This was a place specially for cultivators to train their martial skills. It was extremely popular among cultivators. As the day of the province test approached, Mist City became more and more lively. Many practitioners who were qualified to participate in the province test came from different cities in the southwestern provinces of the empire. In order to make full preparation for the test, many practitioners seized every opportunity to improve their strength and hone their martial arts. Under such circumstances, the business of the Jade Sea Dojo was extremely prosperous, and there was an endless stream of experts coming every day. When Lin Sun arrived, many strong practitioners had already gathered in the Azure Ashram. Most of them were young and in their teens, including men and women. In half a month, the province test will begin. It is said that the number of applicants has already exceeded 5,000. Wow, only 100 people can pass the province test each time. In this way, only 1 out of at least 50 people can pass the test. The elimination rate is too high. Alas, compared with previous years, the competition of this year's province test is really too cruel. It is said that the top practitioners of the younger generation in our southwestern province have all participated in it. Under such circumstances, let alone ordinary practitioners, even those first-class figures may be eliminated. Don't sigh. The province test is to select the most outstanding talents for the empire. Only such people are qualified to represent our southwestern province to participate in the highest level nation test of the empire. Hurry up and practice. Even if the competition of this province test is fierce, who will be willing to give up until the last moment? Yes, it is a test that changes the fate of both the rich and the poor. If you can pass it, you must be like a carp leaping through the dragon gate and rising to the sky. Many people were talking about the upcoming province test. Lin Sun suddenly realized that the province test would begin in only half a month. It seems that I have to hurry up to collect some information about the province test and see how many powerful figures will participate in it. Lin Sun thought to himself. Shu Jin had told him very early that he must not underestimate the people who participated in the province test. Among these young people who were under the age of 18 and selected through county test and state test, there were many amazing and unparalleled geniuses. If he was careless, he was very likely to fail. It was reasonable to think about it. The southwestern province of the empire was so large that there were more than 5,000 young people who participated in the province test. How could there be no extremely powerful figures among the 5,000 elites and outstanding people who had been selected through many stages? Without thinking more, Lin Sun found a waiter and paid 10 gold coins to arrange a secret room for practicing martial arts, which was specially provided for human gangrel practitioners. The waiter soon left, leaving only Lin Sun and 10 copper puppets in the secret room. Each copper puppet had the fighting power of human gang realm, and its defensive power was equally amazing. Practitioners could choose different numbers of copper puppets to fight with. Lin Sun thought about it and directly started all 10 copper puppets. With his current realm, ordinary human gang realm practitioners were nothing in his eyes, let alone copper puppets. But this time he came to practice the 9 strikes for shaking heaven, so he didn't need an opponent with equal strength. Rumble, the eyes of 10 copper puppets suddenly lit up, as if waking up from a dead silence. The next moment, they rushed towards Lin Sun from different directions. What was amazing was that these puppets' attacks were extremely powerful, and they knew how to use martial arts. If they had intelligence, they were almost no different from real practitioners. Seeing this, Lin Sun was also quite satisfied and felt that the expensive price of 10 gold coins was not in vain. Boom! Suddenly, a copper puppet had already attacked Lin Sun, bursting with spiritual light and smashing towards Lin Sun's throat. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun took a deep breath, and the gang spear in his body ran along a unique way and began to boil and surge. Almost at the same time, he pushed his palms flat, and a illusory cyan flowed between his palms and fingers. Immediately, he clenched his palms into fists, and the power that had been accumulated for a long time burst out in an incredible way in an instant. Mountain Splitter! Boom! In an instant, the copper-skinned puppet that was charging over was like a piece of paper. Its body, which possessed astonishing defensive power, suddenly exploded, turning into dust that filled the sky in an instant. The most surprising thing was that the power of Lin Sun's move did not decrease, but spread forward, crushing a long gap in the air. The 3 copper puppets in the rear had no time to dodge and were hit head-on by the fist wind. With 3 loud bangs, the 3 copper puppets were easily smashed into powder. They were smashed into powder in an instant. The terrible killing power shook the walls of the secret chamber, producing a violent vibration and rumbling sound. And this was just the power of one blow of Mountain Splitter. Lin Sun couldn't help being stunned and a little surprised. This was the first time he really exerted the power of 9 strikes for shaking heaven since he practiced it. But he never thought that this power was so terrible. This blow alone made Lin Sun realize that if he fought against Huang Jianshen, he might not be able to bear it. Most importantly, Lin Sun's understanding of 9 strikes for shaking heaven was just at the beginning. He had just touched the surface, but he already had such a destructive power. It could be imagined that when Lin Sun mastered all the essence and mystery of this martial art, he would be able to exert a terrible power. Boom! At this time, the other 6 copper puppets had come, but before Lin Sun could take any action, the door of the secret chamber was opened with a bang. Suddenly, the 6 copper puppets stopped in place, stiff and motionless. This was because the opening of the door of the secret chamber had triggered the mechanism on them, so as to avoid accidents and affecting the innocent. A waiter rushed in anxiously. What happened? What happened just now? Child, are you hurt? God, why are there only 6 copper puppets left? When seeing the scene in the secret chamber, the waiter was stunned. Obviously, he was alarmed by the movement caused by Lin Sun just now. So he hurried here. But he never thought that the practitioners in the secret chamber were safe and sound, but 4 copper puppets were missing. Sorry, I didn't control well just now and destroyed them. Lin Sun was apologetic and a little embarrassed. Destroyed? But why does it look like they disappeared? The waiter looked confused. Even if they were destroyed, there would be a broken body, but there was no such thing in the field. Oh, they are there. Lin Sun pointed to some residue powder on the ground. Chapter 272. A copper puppet was worth 800 gold coins. Although the price was high, its material was extremely excellent. Otherwise, it couldn't stand a few tosses in a fight. This kind of puppet, which was specially designed for human gang practitioners to hone their martial arts, could withstand a full blow from an earth gang practitioner in terms of defense, so it was difficult to be damaged. In the worst-case scenario, even if it was damaged, he would only need to hire a puppet master to repair it, which would cost him a lot of money. But now, 4 copper-skinned puppets had been blasted into powder. What was there to cultivate? Even if they invited a puppet grandmaster, they might not be able to do anything about it. The waiter's face changed with horror and pain. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. After a long while, he looked at Lin Sun with a strange look and said, "Child, are you here to make trouble?" Lin Sun said helplessly, "Who would have thought that this thing is so fragile? It's so vulnerable. If you are embarrassed, I can compensate you for your loss." The attendant shook his head again and again, No, no, you have paid the fee. All the losses will be borne by us. Then he suddenly asked, Child, since this is the case, why don't we change to a secret chamber specially prepared for Earth Gang practitioners? Lin Sun thought for a moment and said, All right. Immediately, under the guidance of the attendant, Lin Sun came to another secret chamber, where there were also 10 copper puppets, but their material and appearance were obviously much better than the previous ones. Obviously, these were puppets with the power of Earth Gang realm. After leading Lin Sun here, the attendant left in a hurry. Not long after, Lin Sun came to a luxurious room. This was the room of Een Daksu, the person in charge of Azure Ashram. At this time, Een Daksu was lying comfortably in the chair, quickly calculating the revenue of these days. Boss, something strange happened just now. After coming in, the attendant told everything he had seen just now, without concealing anything. Een Daksu was stunned for a moment and immediately got up from the chair, saying angrily, Did that guy come from other ashram to make trouble? He was indeed shocked. The 4 copper puppets had been crushed into powder in an instant. This was simply too inconceivable, and it caused him to be unable to help but suspect whether his competitors had sent people to cause trouble. The waiter hesitated. It doesn't look like it. That child is obviously in human gang realm. Een Daksu's eyelids twitched. He cursed loudly. Bullshit. That's a treasure that can withstand the full blow of an Earth Gang practitioner. How can a human gang practitioner do that? The attendant immediately felt wronged and said, Boss, this is true. I saw it with my own eyes. It's definitely not fake. Een Daksu clenched his teeth. With that lousy eyesight of yours, how can you tell if it's real or fake? I'm asking you, where's that brat now? I've arranged for him to enter the Earth Gang realm puppet chamber, the attendant said quickly. You idiot. If they're here to cause trouble, then you're inviting a wolf into the house. If you destroy those Earth Gang realm puppets that are worth thousands of gold coins, I will be the first to peel your skin. The corner of Een Daksu's mouth twitched fiercely as he rushed out in a hurry. The waiter shivered all over and quickly followed him. When they arrived at the front of Lin's chamber, they heard a loud rumble, and the door of the chamber swayed unbearably. Een Daksu's face turned extremely pale. How the hell could a human gang cultivator do this? Obviously, he was here to cause trouble. Without hesitation, he pushed open the door of the chamber and rushed in fiercely. When he saw the scene in the chamber clearly, Een Daksu couldn't help but gasp with a gloomy face despite his shrewdness. On the ground, there were copper puppets lying in disorder. Most of them had broken arms and limbs piled up like a pile of rags. Almost none of them was intact. These were puppets comparable to Earth Gang realm. Each of them was worth thousands of gold coins, and their defensive power could even withstand the attack of Heaven Gang realm. But now all of them were seriously damaged. Een Daksu only felt his heart convulsing fiercely. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Damn, what a bullshit human gang practitioner. He must be here to cause trouble. Seeing this scene, the waiter who followed him couldn't help but gasp again and again, dumbfounded. Wasn't this too cruel? This was a chamber prepared for Earth Gang practitioners, but now it was destroyed by a human gang practitioner. Well, would you believe me if I said it was still an accident? Lin Sun looked at the waiter solemnly, feeling quite helpless in his heart. Just now, he just started to warm up. He never thought that these 10 copper puppets comparable to Earth Gang practitioners should fall down like this. Lin Sun couldn't help but wonder if this thing was of inferior quality. It couldn't stand being destroyed at all. The waiter wanted to cry, but had no tears. I believe you. Now, he also began to seriously suspect that Lin Sun was here to cause trouble. Damn, this is going too far. Suddenly, Een Daksu woke up from his endless anger and let out a roar. He looked at Lin Sun like a fierce beast. But when he saw Lin Sun's appearance clearly, he was stunned and cried out, Lin Sun, how could it be you? Do you know me? Lin Sun was surprised. Een Daksu's face turned green and white, and his arrogance plummeted. He was completely listless like a frosted eggplant. He said bitterly, Child, in today's Mist City, as long as they have a reputation, how can they not know you? He did recognize Lin Sun. He had also gone to the arena to watch the battle between Lin Sun and Huang Jianchen. Under such circumstances, if he still didn't recognize Lin Sun, this devil, he would be blind. Child Lin, what are you here for this time? Daxu took a deep breath, forced himself to suppress all kinds of emotions in his heart, put on a smiling face, and asked respectfully. The waiter looked confused and didn't know what was going on. Of course, I'm here to hone my martial arts, Lin Sun said with a smile. Daxu nodded. His gaze swept across the miserable state of the secret chamber. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, "It seems that this secret chamber is not suitable for you, young master. How about I arrange another secret chamber specially prepared for Heaven Gang realm practitioners?" Lin Sun hesitated. "Is that okay?" Daxu's heart was bleeding, but he said with a smile, "Child, you're welcome. It's an honor for Azure Ashram to have you here." Lin Sun became more and more embarrassed when he saw Yin's enthusiasm. He pointed to the bronze puppets destroyed in the secret chamber and said, "Then these," before he finished, Daxu interrupted him. "It's no big deal. They can continue to be used after some repairs. Child, don't worry about it, lest they spoil your mood." Then Daxu said to the waiter, "Go and arrange a good secret chamber for Child Lin Sun. If there's any neglect, I'll hold you responsible." The waiter was shocked and nodded quickly. Now he finally realized that even if the young child in front of him came to make trouble, he was not someone they dared to offend at all. "Then I won't stand on ceremony." Lin Sun smiled and cupped his hands. He had a good impression of Daxu. "Ha. If child is polite, it means that you look down on me. Please come in. Daxu laughed heartily. Immediately, the waiter took Lin Sun away. Daxu stood alone in the secret chamber, looking at the destroyed bronze puppets on the ground. The smile on his face disappeared, and his heart felt like being cut by a knife. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. Even if they were all repaired, it would cost thousands of gold coins. Why did Lin Sun, the devil, come here? Not long after, the waiter came back. Seeing the boss's mournful look, he couldn't help whispering, "Boss, that guy has completely destroyed 4 Human Gang realm puppets and damaged 10 Earth Gang realm puppets. This loss is too great. You really don't want to pursue this matter?" Daxu slapped the waiter's face and roared, "Pursue this matter, my ass. Do you know who that guy is? In today's Mist City, which powerful force dares to offend him? Azure Ashram is the property of Azure Light Pavilion. Haven't you heard that the young master of Azure Light Pavilion was beaten up by that guy and didn't even dare to fart?" The waiter was stunned. No wonder. This guy is only in Human Gang realm, but he can destroy Earth Gang realm puppets. He is really abnormal. What's more, he has a powerful background. Who dares to offend such a person? Daxu sighed and walked out of the secret chamber with a lonely face. Boom, boom, boom. In the secret chamber, specially prepared for Heaven Gang realm strongmen, 10 puppets started to attack Lin Sun constantly, producing bursts of roars. Lin Sun finally felt the pressure this time. Instead of being surprised, he was happy. He displayed the moves of 9 strikes for shaking heaven one by one, constantly refining his martial arts. Even though his current comprehension of this technique could only be considered to be superficial, the might it displayed could be said to be world-shocking and boundless. If it was seen by other practitioners that Lin Sun, who was only in Human Gang realm, could fight against 10 Heaven Gang realm puppets, they would be shocked. It was common to fight across realms, but it was too rare to fight across 2 realms. But Lin Sun not only did this, but also fought with 10 puppets whose power exceeded his by 2 realms. This was no longer a pervert in the ordinary sense. Of course, puppets were just puppets after all. They could only be equal to practitioners in terms of strength and had no wisdom. There was still a great gap between them and real practitioners after all. But even so, the combat effectiveness Lin Sun showed at the moment could be described as against the natural order. All of this was naturally inseparable from his incomparably deep cultivation foundation and 9 strikes for shaking heaven that he mastered. The power produced by the tyrannical and abnormal cultivation, coupled with the tyrannical and abnormal fighting methods, was absolutely beyond imagination. While Lin Sun was refining his martial arts in the hall of Azure Ashram, someone leaked the news that Lin Sun was practicing martial arts here, which immediately caused an uproar among many practitioners present. Chapter 273. What? Lin Sun is also here. He finally showed up. Since he defeated Huang Jianchen, the son of a powerful family from the Forbidden City, in the gladiator arena, this guy seemed to have disappeared from the world. I never thought that he would appear in the Azure Ashram today. With Lin Sun's fighting capacity, it seems that he can easily pass the province test without practicing martial arts. It's true. Among the more than 5,000 practitioners who signed up for the province test this time, Lin Sun is recognized as the opponent you don't want to meet. In the hall of the Azure Ashram, knowing that Lin Sun was also here, a group of practitioners was in an uproar. They were all alarmed and kept talking about it. An informed person said with a shocked face, "I just heard from a waiter that Lin Sun had crushed 3 human gangrel puppets." In desperation, he could only enter the secret room arranged for Earth Gang Rel practitioners. Who would have thought that the puppets in the secret room were not Lin Sun's opponents at all and were seriously damaged? Finally, under the arrangement of the boss, Indaksu, Lin Sun was allowed to enter the secret room prepared for Heaven Gang Rel practitioners. As soon as the words came out, there was a sound of gasping nearby, and everyone's expression changed abruptly. Doesn't this mean that this guy's fighting capacity is now enough to compete with Heaven Gang Rel practitioners? How is this possible? Someone screamed. Others were also shocked and speechless. They all knew that the Battle of the Pinnacle happened in the arena a few days ago, and they also knew that Lin Sun's fighting capacity was extremely strong, far beyond his peers. But they didn't expect that he was now strong enough to compete with Heaven Gang Rel practitioners. This was too frightening. Is this true? Someone couldn't help but ask. It can't be false. The boss of the Azure Ashram saw it with his own eyes, and Lin Sun is now fighting with Heaven Gang Rel puppets. Someone obviously knew the inside story and affirmed it with certainty. For a while, the atmosphere in the hall became dignified. Most of them were qualified to participate in the province test. When they thought that Lin Sun was one of the competitors of the province test, they couldn't help but feel weak in their hearts. They secretly prayed that they would not meet this guy at that time. Although Lin Sun is powerful, he doesn't have to destroy his own ambition and boost the prestige of others. As far as I know, there are some powerful figures who can compete with Lin Sun in this province test. Someone sneered, breaking the oppressive atmosphere. Many people immediately reacted and nodded secretly. Indeed, the matter of the province test was spread everywhere in Mist City. Among the practitioners who participated in the province test, in addition to Lin Sun, there were dozens of top talents of the younger generation who were the focus of attention. For example, Xu Shaolin, Yu Wenjing, Lu Jiao, and Yun Zitong from Mist College were known as the 4 most outstanding geniuses of the younger generation of Mist College. They were considered the most promising practitioners to reach the top 10 in this province test. Besides them, there were also some outstanding talents of the younger generation from other cities in the Southwest province. All of them had come prepared and possessed shocking combat strength. Alas, no matter what, I don't want to meet Lin Sun. This guy's fighting capacity is too fierce. He's simply not a human being. Some people sighed, which aroused many people's agreement. They were not sure how powerful Lin Sun was, but they were very clear that Lin Sun, who could defeat Huang Jianchen and now could fight with Heaven Gang puppets, was not someone they could provoke. Until 10 in the evening, Lin Sun came out of the secret room. Although he was tired, his spirit was unspeakably high. Through actual combat, he finally roughly judged to what extent his control of 9 strikes for shaking heaven had reached, and also realized how powerful this secret method was. If he practiced it to the deepest level, he could indeed split the mountains and seas, break the soul and swallow the sky, and suppress the hell. It was not an exaggeration. Just like now, the power of 9 strikes for shaking heaven displayed by Lin Sun might not be as powerful as that of RFS, but it was enough to overshadow many first-class secret methods. At that time, the child mother go scripture practice by Huang Jianchen was already very powerful, which caused a lot of big shots in the arena to exclaim and even made Lin Sun feel a lot of pressure. But now, after practicing 9 strikes for shaking heaven compared with the child mother go scripture, the latter was obviously a little inferior. Without comparison, there would be no difference between the two. Through comparison, Lin Sun concluded that what Xu Jin said was true. The 9 strikes for shaking heaven he got from the 3rd test of the Green Cloud Path was indeed a top-notch inheritance of secret methods. Phew, Lin Sun exhaled a turbid breath and walked out of the Azure Ashram. Along the way, he found that all the practitioners he met glanced at him with a strange look, which contained fear, vigilance, and awe. It seemed that he was a scourge, which made Lin Sun frown slightly. What happened? He didn't know that in the hearts of many practitioners who participated in the province test, he had long been recognized as the opponent they didn't want to meet. Child, please wait a moment. Suddenly, the boss Indaxu walked over quickly with a humble smile on his face. He handed a storage bag to Lin Sun. In order to show our sincerity, please accept this. Lin Sun was surprised. What are you doing? Indaxu quickly said, nothing else. I just want to show my respect to you. It's a small gift from Azure Ashram. Lin Sun said with a faint smile, I see. You want to drive me away and won't let me come here in the future, right? Indaxu suddenly sweated and said embarrassedly, I don't dare. As long as you come, the door of Azure Ashram is always open for you. Lin Sun waved his hand and said, okay, I see. After saying that, he strode away. Child, please accept this gift, Indaxu shouted. Thank you for your kindness. Goodbye. Lin Sun didn't look back and disappeared outside the gate of Azure Ashram. Seeing this, Indaxu let out a long sigh of relief. He wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and rejoiced that he had finally sent this demon away. If he had come 2 more times, he would have torn down his Azure Sea dojo. Boss, I've checked clearly. All the puppets in the Heaven Gang secret room are not destroyed. Before long, the waiter ran over and reported in a low voice. That's good. That's good. Indaxu suddenly felt relaxed again. However, although those puppets are not destroyed, there are many damages. If you want to repair them, ordinary puppeteers may not be able to do it. You have to hire a puppet master. Roughly speaking, it will cost at least 2,000 gold coins. Indaxu was stiff all over and his face was cloudy. After a long while, he stared at the waiter and gnashed his teeth. Can't you speak properly? Can you suffocate if I say it in one breath? He roared loudly and flew into a rage, but his heart was bleeding. Damn it, this fiend was too cruel. Just by coming here today, he had made the Azure Sea Ashram lose thousands of gold coins. This was a huge sum of money. It was equal to a month's income of Azure Ashram, but he had lost all of it today. Indaxu was on the verge of breaking down. Who the hell did I offend? Why did the heavens send this malefic to torment me? It was dusk when Lin Sun walked out of Azure Ashram. A round of sunset dyed half of Mist City red. The streets were still bustling and bustling. Lin Sun was about to call a roaring spiritual tattoo shuttle to go home. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure not far away. Guliang? Why did he come here? That person was Guliang. At this time, he was enthusiastically introducing something to a young man in white. Child, don't worry. I will never delay your duel in the province test. I only have a small request. That is, when you win, you can help to promote my shop. Before he finished, the young man in white impatiently pushed Guliang away and said, Get out of my way. I can't afford to lose face like this. Then he left. Child, isn't 10 gold coins enough? Guliang shouted unwillingly. Damn, don't insult me again. I don't lack money. A disdainful voice of the young man in white came from afar. Guliang shrugged helplessly. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of him. Guliang looked up and saw Lin Sun's familiar face. He immediately said with joy, Lin Sun, why are you here? Lin Sun explained casually and couldn't help but ask, What are you doing here? Guliang said helplessly, What else can I do? To promote Golden Hall. It turned out that although Gu Yang had successfully routed Golden Hall in Mist City, its business was very bleak these days. In desperation, he could only find another way to promote the reputation of Golden Hall for the province test. As long as it had a reputation, it could attract a steady stream of customers, and the business of Golden Hall would inevitably improve step by step. Lin Sun suddenly understood and said with a smile, "No wonder you stopped that guy just now. It turns out that you want him to help you promote in the province test." Gu Yang said seriously, "It's not that simple. The province test attracts the attention of the whole Mist City, and it can even be called an annual event of the whole Southwest province. If we can promote the name of Golden Hall in the province test, many people will definitely know the existence of Golden Hall." Lin Sun thought for a while and couldn't help but praise, "Good idea." Indeed, according to what Gu Yang said, it was enough to spread the name of Golden Hall in the province test without any effort. This publicity strategy was really wonderful. Gu Yang said with a wry smile, "It's just that I ignored one point. Those who can participate in the province test, whether poor or rich, are all proud and conceited. They disdain to cooperate with me and think that it is too low to do so, which is tantamount to disgrace their identity. No matter how many benefits I offer, they don't agree. So I haven't found a suitable partner until now." Lin Sun was speechless. This was normal. No one who could participate in the province test was simple. Whether they could pass the test or not, as long as they were willing, they could get a good future. Under such circumstances, how could they condescend and use their reputation to help a merchant advertise a store? "Do you think I could do it?" Lin Sun suddenly said with a smile. Chapter 274. Gu Yang was stunned. To be honest, Lin Sun was the first person he thought of when he started to publicize Golden Hall. But he didn't do so in the end. Lin Sun had helped him too much. The value of the peerless spiritual materials Lin Sun had given him was equivalent to more than 100,000 gold coins. Under such circumstances, how could he have the face to ask Lin Sun for help? In particular, Gu Yang was also an extremely proud and self-respecting teenager. He didn't want to ask Lin Sun for help when he encountered some difficulties, which would make him look too incompetent. Therefore, when Lin Sun mentioned this matter at this moment, Gu Yang hesitated in his heart. There was no doubt that choosing Lin Sun as the propagandist was undoubtedly the most effective. Gu Yang now had a great reputation in Mist City. If he could help with this matter, he would definitely be stronger than other practitioners. But Gu Yang couldn't say it for the time being. "All right, it's settled then." Lin Sun seemed to have seen through Gu Yangxing's thoughts. He patted him on the shoulder and said, "Remember, since we are friends, it is natural for us to help each other. What's more, I am also waiting to make a fortune through Golden Hall. How can I watch my business lose money?" Gu Yang smiled bitterly and wanted to explain, but was interrupted by Lin Sun. "Tell me, how are you going to publicize it?" "I'll just do it then." Gu Yang said grumpily. "First of all, it's you who asked me to help you." Lin Sun said with a smile, "Of course. Let's go to Golden Hall and have a good talk. I haven't seen you for a long time." Gu Yang couldn't help laughing and felt warm in his heart. This was Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't leave Golden Hall until late at night. He negotiated with Gu Yang for a long time and finally finalized a set of publicity plans. According to Gu Yang, he actually had a more perfect publicity strategy, but it was too late to do it now. He could only find another opportunity to do it later. After learning Gu Yang's strategy and ideas, Lin Sun couldn't help marveling in his heart. Sure enough, everyone had his own specialty. Perhaps Gu Yang was far inferior to him in cultivation, but in business, Gu Yang was definitely a rare genius. The concept and plan that Gu Yang had described that night were already too marvelous to be described with words. It was a strategy that was rarely seen in the Imperium right now. Lin Sun couldn't help but look forward to how much attention he would attract when he started to help publicize Golden Hall after the province test began. Although it was late at night, Shu Jin did not fall asleep as usual. Instead, he sat alone in the courtyard, drinking wine, as if he was thinking about something. Seeing Lin Sun coming back, he said casually, "The province test will begin in half a month." Lin Sun nodded and said, "I already know. Then he was startled and keenly noticed that Shu Jin was a little absent-minded. "Old Jin, is there something on your mind?" Lin Sun could not help asking. "Nothing. It's just that when the province test is over, I will leave." Shu Jin took a sip of wine and sighed. Lin Sun was stunned. Unconsciously, he and Shu Jin had bin together for more than half a year, and now it was time to separate. He couldn't help but feel slightly complicated. Shu Jin had helped him a lot these days. If it weren't for Shu Jin, it would be difficult for him to gain a foothold in Mist City. Knowing that Shu Jin was about to leave, it was absolutely false that Lin Sun didn't feel sad. Shu Jin suddenly laughed and said, "What's wrong? Are you very sad?" Lin Sun nodded, but this time he was not in the mood to joke. Instead, he asked seriously, "Old Jin, where are you going after leaving?" Shu Jin thought for a while, and then said, "I should go to the Wasteland of Turmoil." The Wasteland of Turmoil. It was the base camp of the Empire of the Dark, where the three dark races, Voodoo Barbarian Tribe, Abyss Devil Spirit, and Cold Moon Soul Tribe, were stationed. When he was in the Bloodthirsty camp, Lin Sun had learned that the Wasteland of Turmoil was an area more vast and ancient than the territory of the Imperium. Numerous dark races were distributed there, which was the most dangerous place. Among them, the Voodoo Barbarian Tribe was the real enemy of the Imperium. But this tribe alone had brought countless blood and destruction to the Imperium in the past 1,000 years. Even now, the Imperium didn't have the power to completely defeat the Voodoo Barbarian Tribe. It could be imagined how terrible the background of the Voodoo Barbarian Tribe was. And in the Wasteland of Turmoil, there was not only the Voodoo Barbarian Tribe. If Shu Jin went there, it could be imagined what terrible dangers he would encounter. "What?" Lin Sun frowned and asked. "In recent years, the Imperium has become more and more powerful. Those dark bastards have become more and more restless and are ready to make trouble. The war may break out at any time. I'm going there to find out the truth. I won't encounter any danger." Shu Jin said casually. "You have to go?" Lin Sun asked. Shu Jin suddenly said, "Do you remember the words on the stone tablet in front of the gate of the Bloodthirsty camp? Xiao Flower is invincible because of bloodthirsty, and the Imperium is everlasting because of war." Speaking of this, the usual rudeness and unruly look on his face disappeared, and he became extremely serious. As a practitioner of the Imperium, there are some things that must be done. Lin Sun was in a daze, and his heart was inexplicably touched. He thought of Drillmaster Shu Sanchi. "Young Ku, young man, and old Amo have a drink with me?" Shu Jin suddenly asked. "Okay." Lin Sun nodded. They didn't talk more and drank in silence. The night passed, and neither of them mentioned this matter again. They did what they should do, which seemed no different from before. But Lin Sun knew that after this province test, Shu Jin was destined not to stay. As time went by, the time of the province test was getting closer and closer, and Mist City became more and more lively. All kinds of topics were related to the discussion of the province test. Almost all the inns in the city were full. Practitioners from other cities in Southwest Province could be seen everywhere on the streets. Most of them came to see the fun, and some of them came on behalf of their respective forces and families with important tasks. The reason was simple. In this province test, more than 5,000 young strongmen who stood out through layers of selection would participate, but only 100 people could pass the test in the end. Even though there would be a few thousand people that would fail in the end, every single one of these people that failed were outstanding figures with enormous potential. If they were able to rope them into their powers and clans, then it would undoubtedly be equivalent to adding a new force to their powers and clans. This was also the reason why Gu Liang was repeatedly refused when he asked people to help promote Golden Hall. Those who could participate in the province test, whether rich or poor, were the targets of the major forces and had a bright future. How could they be interested in the rewards offered by Gu Liang? In short, this province test was a grand event for the whole Imperium to select the pillars of the Imperium. When the time came, there would be a gathering of geniuses. Those who were lucky enough to pass the test were destined to be like a fish leaping over the Dragon Gate. For those major forces and clans, this was a feast to carve up and attract talents, which was absolutely not to be missed. Similarly, for all the ordinary people in the whole southwestern province, this was also a wonderful event, so that they could see the style of the young generation of practitioners, so that they could encourage their children to work hard and strive to become a practitioner. In short, the province test was different from the county test and the state test. Its standard was extremely high, second only to the nation test. None of the practitioners who could reach this step was simple. Similarly, the test participated by them together was destined to be an unprecedented event. Soon, under the expectation of countless people, the day of the province test in the southwest province of the Imperium finally came. On this day, the sky was clear and the wind was gentle. At dawn, Mist City was already lively. If you looked down from the sky, you could clearly see that on the streets of Mist City, people were gathering in the same direction like a tide. That was Mist College. As the venue of the province test, Mist City had an open field that could accommodate 100,000 people. Every year, in addition to those who participated in the test, other practitioners could also enter the field with the prepared certificate to watch the test. Of course, it was impossible to enter without the certificate. Lin Sun also went out early in the morning. When he arrived at Mist College, there was already a sea of people. As far as the eye could see, there were blackheads everywhere, which was extremely spectacular. In front of the college, many guards had already been arranged. Only those with the token of participating in the test or the certificate of watching the test could enter. But even so, it did not affect the enthusiasm of those onlookers. This was the province test. The popularity alone was enough to show how amazing the attention this grand event received. Lin Sun did not rush in. After waiting there for a moment, he saw Gu Liang's figure rushing over. Look how popular it is. If today's publicity is successful, Golden Hall will be popular tomorrow, Gu Liang said excitedly. Lin Sun smiled and said, "Is everything ready?" Gu Liang nodded. Immediately, the two lined up and walked into Mist College. When they walked into Mist College, it was another scene. Almost no ordinary people could be seen. All of them were practitioners. There was no need to ask the way at all. Lin Sun followed the crowd in front of them and soon came to an open field. In the center of the field, there were a total of 100 arenas, each of which was the size of an acre. They were scattered there and looked extremely magnificent. Around the field, there were densely packed seats, which could accommodate 100,000 people. At this time, those seats had already been filled with black figures who were talking with each other. Just those voices gathered together, like rolling thunder, constantly echoing between the heaven and the earth in this field. When seeing this scene, Lin Sun could not help but take a breath. Look at this scene. Wasn't it too spectacular? Gu Liang's eyes were shining with excitement. He murmured, "With your means and my cooperation, it's hard for our Golden Hall not to be famous this time." Chapter 275. There was a hubbub of voices in the field, which was unprecedentedly grand. Lin Sun told Gu Liang casually, and then walked forward alone with the token of participating in the assessment. Not far ahead, there was a special assessment area. All the practitioners who participated in the assessment needed to go there and wait for the assessment to begin. When Lin Sun arrived, there were already many figures gathered in the assessment area. There were men and women, all under the age of 18. There were thousands of people. Most of them were from rich families, and there were also some practitioners from poor backgrounds, but they were relatively few. Before the assessment began, the boys and girls in the assessment area were talking and chatting. Their faces were full of longing, expectation, nervousness, excitement, and other emotions. The province test was an opportunity for them to change their fate. If they could pass it, they would be famous all over the world, and from then on, they would rise to the sky and be detached from the world. I heard that in this province test, the big shots in the southwestern province will come to watch. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Even if you fail in the end, as long as you perform well, you will surely have a chance to be noticed by those big shots. That's too harsh. It's too spineless to think that you will fail before the assessment begins. It's not a matter of having the backbone, but the reality. Do you think that people like us can fight against those real top geniuses? Save your breath. There will be no place for you among the 100 people who will pass the assessment. Sai, that's right. Actually, I don't have any extravagant hopes of passing the exam. I only hope that I don't encounter those peak figures in the exam so that I can display my strength. If I can catch the eye of some peak power, that would be enough. Yes, those top figures are too powerful. I heard that many of them have the powerful cultivation of Earthgang realm. Even top figures such as Xu Shaolin, Yu Wenjing, Li Jiao, and Yun Zitong, who have long been famous, have the cultivation of Heavengang realm. Heavengang realm? God, it's too scary, isn't it? What's the fuss? The province test only stipulates that practitioners must be under the age of 18 and above the human gang realm. Practitioners without higher cultivation are not allowed to participate. Damn, it's infuriating to compare with others. Who can imagine that a guy under the age of 18 could have the cultivation of Heavengang realm? I just hope that I don't run into these freaks during the assessment later. Haha, a high cultivation is undoubtedly powerful. Don't forget that there are also some powerful figures in the human gang realm. Some people can even fight across realms. Who? Of course, it's Lin Sun. I knew it was him. This guy is publicly acknowledged as the most undesirable opponent. Damn, he's a living freak. I heard that a few days ago, Lin Sun fought directly with Heavengang realm puppets in the Azure Ashram to hone his martial arts. Don't you think he's a freak? The sounds of discussion resounded ceaselessly within the test area. All of them were analyzing the situation that the test would face, and it seemed to be extremely bustling. When it came to those famous top young people, all of them would mention Lin Sun's name. Lin Sun, who had just arrived here, couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't expect that he was already so famous. The weirdest thing was that those guys were talking about him, and he was standing here, but no one recognized him, which made Lin Sun a little funny. Suddenly, he was stunned. He saw a little fat man next to him with his eyes closed and his hands clasped together. He kept muttering and praying devoutly. Vaguely, the little fat man seemed to be saying, "God, please, don't let me meet a freak like Lin Sun." Lin Sun almost couldn't help but roll his eyes. Am I so terrible? At this time, the little fat man opened his eyes and caught a glimpse of Lin Sun's speechless appearance. He couldn't help but say, "Dude, don't be ridiculous. As far as I know, Lin Sun is a devil. Whoever provokes him will suffer." Lin Sun, seeing that Lin Sun didn't believe him, the little fat man was anxious. "I really don't lie to you. I watched the battle between him and Huang Jianshun a few days ago. You can't imagine how terrible he is." Lin Sun finally couldn't help but say, "Since you have watched that battle, can you tell me what Lin Sun looks like?" The little fat man said without hesitation, "It was too far away at that time. I only vaguely saw that the guy was 9 feet tall with a green face and fangs. He looked ferocious, like a devil rushing out of hell." Lin Sun suddenly rolled his eyes, resisted the urge to beat him, and turned away. It was so annoying. Green face and fangs? Ferocious? When did he become a devil? "Hey dude, why are you leaving? I didn't lie to you." The little fat man cried. But Lin Sun didn't pay attention to him. It was already very kind of him not to beat him. Lin Sun finally confirmed that those practitioners who participated in the assessment might have heard something about him, but most of them were just rumors. Not long after, Lin Sun finally saw some familiar figures, such as Wen Mingxiu, Yuan Shu, Qi Yunxiao, and so on. Obviously, they were also going to participate in the province test. Almost at the same time, Wen Mingxiu and others also saw Lin Sun alone, and their expressions suddenly became strange. Most of them had complicated feelings about Lin Sun, including hatred, fear, awe, and admiration. It was extremely complicated. "Sister Mingxiu, what's wrong with you?" Suddenly, a young man in brocade clothes came over and glanced at Wen Mingxiu and others with a little surprise. "Brother Shui. Nice to meet you, Brother Shui." Suddenly, Wen Mingxiu and others woke up from their thoughts. When they saw the young man in brocade clothes, they couldn't help showing a touch of respect. This young man in brocade clothes was Xu Shaolin, one of the 4 most famous geniuses of Miss College. At the age of 17, He already had the high cultivation of Heaven Gang realm. We've embarrassed ourselves in front of senior brother Shui. We just saw an acquaintance. When Mingxiu explained in a low voice, "Who? Is he the successor of our mist college?" Shu Shaolin asked with interest. "No." When Mingxiu shook her head. When she was about to explain, Qi Yinxiao said first, "Brother Shui, aren't you also curious about who Lin Sun is? Look, he is over there." Qi Yinxiao said and pointed to the distance. "Lin Sun." Shu Shaolin's eyes flashed with a touch of light. He looked into the distance, but only saw Lin Sun's back, and soon disappeared in the crowd. However, Shu Shaolin could remember Lin Sun just by looking at his back, because he often heard the name Lin Sun a few days ago. He couldn't help but wonder who the guy who could defeat Huang Jianxin was. Now, he finally saw Lin Sun with his own eyes, but it was just a back. If there is a chance, I hope to fight with him in the province test. It must be very interesting, Shu Shaolin said with a chuckle. Wen Mingxiu and others were all stunned with complicated feelings. Although Shu Shaolin had the cultivation of Heaven Gang realm, which was 2 realms higher than Lin Sun, it was hard to say who would win if they fought. It was not that they had no confidence in Shu Shaolin, but they all knew very well that Lin Sun was a pervert who didn't play according to common sense. Whoever dared to underestimate him was absolutely an idiot. Seeing their reaction, Shu Shaolin couldn't help but be stunned. After a little thought, he understood and couldn't help frowning. Was Lin Sun so powerful that he could keep Wen Mingxiu and others silent? It was getting more and more interesting. Shu Shaolin's heart surged with an irrepressible fighting intent. If he just said it casually before, at this moment, he really wanted to fight with Lin Sun. Shu Shaolin suddenly thought that if Yu Wenjing, Li Zhiyou, and Yin Zitong knew all this, they might have the same idea as him. Before long, a melodious and clear bell suddenly sounded between heaven and earth, which immediately made the noisy and lively atmosphere in the field quiet. Whether it was the audience around the field or the participants waiting in the assessment area, they all looked at the easternmost part of the field. There was a white jade platform floating in the air, overflowing with spiritual light, like a pavilion in the air, which looked very mysterious. At this time, there was already a row of figures sitting on the white jade platform. In the center was the governor Lu Wujuan. On both sides of him sat Wei Lingjun, the president of Mist College, Du Dongtu, the leader of Xiling Army, and other respected great practitioners. They were the witnesses of the province test. In the next time, they would cooperate with the chief examiner Lu Wujuan to evaluate the assessment. The whole field was silent, and the atmosphere became extremely solemn. Under the attention of the crowd, Wei Lingjun got up and first announced some rules and precautions of the province test, and then encouraged those who participated in the assessment. His voice was as clear as the morning bell and evening drum, drifting between heaven and earth. Finally, he glanced at the whole field and announced the start of the assessment. Almost at the same time, in the assessment area, a group of practitioners who participated in the assessment were arranged in different areas and began to draw lots. The stick Lin Sun drew was marked with first battle, number 36, opponent Tan Long, which also meant that he would fight with an opponent named Tan Long on the number 36 platform in the field in the first battle. According to the rules of the province test, there would also be battles on the other 99 platforms in the field at the same time. The time was 30 minutes. The winner would enter the next round of assessment, and the loser would be directly eliminated. When the time for a stick of incense to burn is up, if there is no winner, then the 2 participating practitioners will both be eliminated. When the first battle was over, the other 200 practitioners would continue to fight on the platform, and so on. When all 5,436 participants had fought, the first round of the assessment was over. In other words, in the first round of assessment, all the practitioners who participated in the assessment would go to the 100 platforms in the field in order and fight with their opponents who drew lots. In this way, when the first round of assessment was over, it meant that half of the participants would be eliminated. Counting only half of the eliminated people, it was equivalent to 2,718 people. This elimination rate was more than cruel. It was simply abnormal. This was the province test. Only the real top powerhouses of the young generation could pass through rounds of cruel assessment and finally stand out.